and Query.
I throw, you catch. It's not that hard, okay? All right, get the out of here.
I'm going to talk a lot about drills and fundamentals.
Watch it, watch it, watch it, watch it.
On 93.5
Watch it.
and 107.5.
Boom, baby.
The Fan.
I think the smoke from some lingering fireworks still in the air on this Wednesday morning. I assume it's back to reality for 90-ish% of the workforce here on this Wednesday, July 5th. That's certainly the case for myself. I am Kevin Bowen, Jake Query, and Mark Dykton as we are back in the saddle here. Happy 4th of July to everybody out there. And for the most part, I thought the firework explosion around my house seemed to tame around 10:30-ish, 11 o'clock. Kids slept through it, so that's all that matters.
About 11:30 or, well, a little past 12. You had your outliers around 12. I had mentioned, I learned my lesson, Kevin. And I am 100% all about people celebrating Independence Day and getting together with barbecues and cookouts and swimming and even going down to the bottom of the driveway with the kids and having their own little 20, 30-minute fireworks show. That's cool. I made a comment on social media like on Saturday night about the people that use it as an excuse to like blow up the entire neighborhood for a week straight, and how like to most neighbors it becomes a little tiresome. And then people mistook me for Mao Zedong, so I'm like, all right, cool. I'm not even gonna mention it. I thought last night I watched on television.
Hashtag deport Jake.
That's right. I watched on television the fireworks show downtown. I thought it was outstanding. I thought they did a great job. The music was fabulous with it. There's nothing like Ray Charles' version of America the Beautiful. It's awesome. And the fireworks look great. I thought and kudos to Fox 59, which is the station on which I was watching it. The aerials they had of the fireworks like throughout from the different aerial views of downtown made Indianapolis look really, really good. So it was great. What did you do for the holiday itself, Kevin?
Yeah, we didn't do a whole lot. It was more of like a decompress. Let's finally unpack from the week-long family reunion up in northern Michigan. We went to Upland yesterday with the kids. Always enjoy stopping there. So we were at Upland right there at 49th and College. Walked there. And then for the most part, again, it was just kind of like, all right, back to reality. I had some bad Sunday scaries last night. I was like, do I know how to work?
Yeah, it is weird. Doesn't it feel? It is obviously a Wednesday that feels like a Monday.
Yeah. Which
it's very strange.
Then driving in, I'm like, okay, you can do this. It's 3 shows. Come on now.
I thought about that.
I'm like,
I thought
pep
about
talking
that too.
myself at 38th and Capitol driving down here.
And then Capitol was one lane the whole way down. You're like, what happened here?
I'm like, was that a firework that made that sidewalk all of a sudden just turn into a crater there? But I am looking forward to today's show because while we haven't chatted to you in a while, there certainly is a ton of Pacers news. Obviously, the NBA calendar enters this kind of weird period here where they take a massive moratorium around July 1st, but yet you have all these news items. And later this week, the Pacers will head to Vegas for their Summer League. Last year, we had Ronald Nored, Pacers Summer League coach, who I saw is now in Atlanta.
Correct. Went to the Hawks.
Yeah. Mike Bray, is on that Hawks staff now. So Mike Bray.
Loading up on all the Indiana connections.
Mike Bray and Ronald Nored now with Quinn Snyder in Atlanta. We're going to have Jannero Pargo on the show. He is the Pacers Summer League coach coming up at 8:30. And again, that's a Summer League roster that is not just Jarris Walker, Ben Shepherd, Oscar Tshiebwe, those guys. It's got a Benedict Mathurin. It's got Andrew Nembhard. It's got Isaiah Jackson. So looking forward to that conversation coming up around 8:30 amidst all of the other Pacers headlines over the last handful of days.
Pargo, I don't know why I've had this mental block. It's kind of like is it Dustin Dopirak, right?
No, God.
Dopirak.
Yes.
Okay. It's a similar mental hurdle as that. I have, for whatever reason, I can't get it out of my mind that Pargo played collegiately at Temple, which he did not, right?
I have no idea.
I believe he played at Oklahoma. Am I wrong? But in my mind, I always keep thinking there's a player.
Was he about a decade in the NBA?
Yeah, it was either Temple or UMass that had a player of similar name that I'm thinking of that I can't get out of my mind.
Arkansas for Mr. Pargo.
Arkansas, sorry. It's going to be like halfway through the interview today at about 8:40 because he's joining us at 8:30 Talk Summer League. I might embarrass you guys by just asking a question like, so what was John Chaney like?
See, I remember a Gonzaga player, kind of a high flyer guard named Jannero Pargo.
They might be related now that you mention it. That's right. What year was that?
Don't think he would be as old as Jannero. Jannero's in his 40s. Boy, I did not think we'd be on the Pargo family tree at 7:05 in the morning.
Well, I mean, we're right back. It's like riding a horse, Kevin.
But I am looking forward to chatting with him because I do think, in the few media sessions I've seen with him, he is pretty candid about the guys on the team. And, sometimes you get a player in that role, or I should say a young coach in that role, and it's like, oh, boy, I don't want to ruffle any feathers here. But we'll get some Summer League action. I think Trey
brother of Jannero Pargo. Jeremy Pargo.
Jeremy is?
Yes.
Gonzaga? Is that right?
Correct, yep.
Trace Jackson-Davis sounds like a little banged up, has not played early for the Warriors, I should say, in their Summer League. I know Jalen Hood-Schifino had a nice point total in his Summer League debut, a bit inefficient from the field. I think those two are scheduled to play against each other coming up Friday night. Again, we'll see about health for Trace Jackson-Davis as the Summer League gets underway.
One Summer League player, one NBA player, and I want to make clear, I think people, because I've mentioned this guy several times, and I'm just fascinated by him. I don't have like a rooting interest. I mean, I guess I'd have a rooting interest, but I'm not hoping for this to be the case. But one guy, if I'm not mistaken, who is still a free agent in the NBA that I've heard no rumblings about, no rumors about, unless I've missed something in the last week when I was, detached or whatnot, who I wonder if he hasn't played his last game, at least for a while in the NBA, and is going to have to go elsewhere to play his way back into the league. It's a guy that was in the epicenter of everyone's radar 5 years ago, and you hear nothing about him. And he guessed.
Fill us in. I've gotten nothing.
Romeo Langford. Romeo Langford's contract, his first contract in the NBA, is up with San Antonio. He has not re-signed with San Antonio.
Is he on a Summer League roster?
And he is not. I looked. He is not on their Summer League roster.
Yeah, I saw the Spurs did not pick up. I think they maybe had a team option with him, and I saw they did not pick that up. So clearly moving in a different direction on that front.
But you don't even hear, and he's still a young player, and he has at times, I think, shown. Can you say he's shown flashes? I don't know. He has at times gone in and at least looked competent. Let's say that. Not a ringing endorsement, I realize. But he's only, he's 23 years old. Averaged 7 points a game last year, 43 appearances. He, health-wise and defensive-wise, I think are probably the areas where, just energy-wise.
Yeah, it's not a good thing when you can't hang around the Spurs right now.
And the problem is, correct, and the problem is, Kevin, a lot of players I think you look at and you say, well, as soon as they get into the right system, or they were, they were with a franchise that didn't necessarily play their style. He's been with two of them now. So it's not like you can say, well, he got his start, but he was just kind of in a bad fit and got buried there, and another team can say, well, we're going to give him an opportunity here. To your point, San Antonio last year, if you didn't get opportunity at that play, there, then
yeah, he's been in win now, and he's been in tank.
Correct.
And neither have worked out, whether that was Boston or San Antonio. Several guys with Indiana ties, that would be either the state or the university, moved in different directions here in free agency. We'll run down those. Obviously, the big Bruce Brown news, Obi Toppin coming here to Indiana. Again, Jannero Pargo going to join us at 8:30. Have we gotten word yet? Is there a parade in Westfield today for their native man?
For Joey?
For Mr. Chestnut?
You know what they could do? When you were gone, Kevin, Sam Fritz filled in on the board for us. Sam, in addition to working with Mark and I last week, Sam was working in the afternoon hours, not only on WIBC's news staff, but also putting together the music that was Sam was the one that kind of put that all together and into the system. That was the music that the fireworks last night downtown were synced to. So they could hire Sam and WIBC and their music library to play the music for the parade for Joey Chestnut.
Oh, I thought you were referencing maybe Sam's history and eating contest.
Sam probably does have a history in eating contest, but
you should see him handle a chorizo. It's crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed that as a popular eating
is he
contest
the one that
item.
leaves the BW3 boxes in here?
No, that's not him.
Do we know? But Joey Chestnut, how about that? 62 of them yesterday, right?
Amidst, a little bit of...
Wouldn't you pace yourself? Because didn't he win by like 16 hot dogs?
Well, remember last year he had to dismantle the protester.
That's right. No, was that last year or 2 years ago?
And that was last year.
That was fabulous.
And then this year, Mother Nature said, all right, Joey, we're going to throw a curveball at you. And he called, everybody back out to the stage there in Coney Island. 62 hot dogs in 10 minutes for Joey Chestnut. Did you see the number of calories that is?
I'm going to guess here. I'm going to guess that 62 hot dogs are 20,800 calories.
18,000 calories there for Joey Chestnut. Wow. A little over 1,100 in total fat. Carb-wise, 1,400, so should be good on carbs for the rest of July. That is now 16 times in the last 17 years Joey Chestnut has held up the belt.
So I believe they say, every 3,000 excessive calories is a pound of weight? So he gained 6 pounds yesterday? I mean, he's got to burn that off.
What do you think the next week looks like for him?
That's a good question. Good question.
I did think it was cool when they announced him and they're like Westfield, Indiana. I'm like, hell yeah. Come on.
No more Bay Area for him now, right?
No, he's calling Westfield home, which I think he's done now for the last couple of years. I know we've had him in studio before. A lot of relationships partners with St. Elmo here downtown for Joey Chestnut. So that was the certainly the appointment television yesterday. Slight delay, but around 2:00, Joey and the crew called back out there. I did see there was a couple. One in the women's eating contest, and then I think fiance was in the men's eating contest.
Now, have you had a
can you
Nathan's
imagine
famous coney or a hot dog?
I can't say I've had that specific.
They're different. Have you been there, Mark?
My mom literally bought some for the first time ever over the weekend. So this is the first time I ever had one.
Look at that marketing.
I know.
They're different though, right? They're like it's more
of a smoky flavor.
And it's also, I don't know how to word this, like how do I word it's like a more thin, the link itself is not as big as like a ballpark hot dog.
You're saying it's a thin hot dog.
Correct. And the if you go to the Nathan's there, the bun is like kind of a toasted, like softer, more collapsed, like smash bun, if you will. I know that sounds really weird to say.
Boy, you really got into that.
I did. Well, I went to Coney Island, I don't know, probably 5 years ago. I was in New York. I had free time. I don't remember why I was there, for work for some reason. Must have been a race in the air or something. I'm like, I'm going to go to Coney Island. I've never been to Coney Island. So I went there and just walked around. It's very nostalgically cool. But Nathan's right there. I mean, you turn the corner and you're like, whoa, there it is. And it's a pretty dominant.
Do you have any eating contest history? Mark and I obviously participated in one when you faked COVID a few years ago.
Uh-huh.
I do not, actually. I'm trying to think.
Mark the victor, of course.
Yeah, still proudly hang the championship belt in my house.
Okay, Mark, you won the St. Elmo Shrimp Cocktail Eating Contest as part of this station. I was fairly new, if I'm not mistaken.
Uh-huh.
And I did it must have been right around the start of the year, because that's when I had COVID, right?
It was right around Christmas. It honestly was the begin of the Colts' demise. That was Colts-Raiders game, Mark.
That was Colts-Raiders.
That was the Carson Wentz.
We were the highlight of that game, I believe.
Lose your last two games, losing Jacksonville.
So he got COVID
week.
with me.
Yeah, I think you were part of that. Although Carson did play in the game.
And so that at that time, you guys took on the St. Elmo Shrimp Cocktail Contest, and Mark, you won. Now, I believe personally, and I love the shrimp cocktail at St. Elmo. Who doesn't? But the sinus, the impact on your sinuses, I have very sensitive sinuses, so it is rough for me. But I think the bigger wallop to the sinuses and the more underappreciated Indianapolis staple of, like, watch somebody try to eat it is the mustard at Rathskeller.
Yeah, you have mentioned that before.
Have you had that, Mark?
No.
Have you, Kevin?
No.
I'm telling you. You get a pretzel and Rathskeller is just fantastic. But you get a pretzel at Rathskeller with the mustard, good night, man. I'm telling you.
Good night.
Is that what the demise was for Bjorn Werner's time here with the Colts?
He spent too much time at the Rathskeller.
You know, I tried to get Bjorn Werner on the show to talk about the Frankfurt, Germany game. He's like the German correspondent for NFL games over there.
Where is he living now? Is he in Germany?
I don't know what part of Germany, but basically they have some sort of international contract to air NFL games, and he's the color analyst.
What was the, in your opinion, Kevin? Because this speaks to, I think, the crapshoot level of the draft itself in any sport. And we're going to talk plenty about the Pacers and their pieces that they've acquired and what they've done over the course of the show today. That'll be probably a big part of the conversation today. But Bjorn Werner, here's a guy that played at a big-time college, that was productive in college. By all account, you would know better than I. By all account, a good guy. I mean, not a guy that was like going out and tearing up the city and irresponsible or anything like that, but yet just absolutely couldn't get it going in the NFL. For what reason do you think he was such the disappointment?
Yeah, I mean, not
what
to
held
get
him back?
Too like Chris Ballardy into traits, but I think the athletic profile of Werner is not something that like people would classify as a first-round pick. He's not this eye-popping, crazy athlete. And yes, he was productive at Florida State. I think if I'm not mistaken, I believe he was ACC Defensive Player of the Year.
I think that's right.
Scheme, I think there were some scheme questions as well. That was still back in the Chuck Pagano, Greg Minuski days of a 3-4. Health wasn't great for him either. But, boy, when you bring up you just think to the misses. And again, this is a Colts topic we can get into more here as training camp is what? I think it's 3 weeks from today, I believe, is the first practice. So much will be about Anthony Richardson, and understandably so, Jake. But when you talk about Kwity Paye, specifically, I guess let's just go there, considering the position that Werner played. If you look at all the pass rushers the Colts have drafted early, let's just say early since Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney were in their prime, whether it's Jerry Hughes, whether it's Bjorn Werner, whether it's Kamoko Toure, whether it's Ben Banigou, hell, throw Terrell Basham in there. He was a third-round pick, but all those other guys first or second. Jake Kwity Paye's easily had the best start to his NFL career of any of those handful of names that I just mentioned.
And I think people forget.
And it's not like Paye set the world on fire, to be clear. It's more of those dudes have literally, it looks like they've been at the Rathskeller slamming those beers. The pizza there always was a little dicey for me. But the pretzel with mustard sounds like could be something to open your sinuses.
Buddy, I mean, you will be able to smell like the clear winds of like Arizona from here if it opens you up that much. I think, Kwity Paye, to that point, Kevin, it's very easy, and I'm guilty of this as much as anybody, it's very easy to kind of write a guy off after a season or a season and a half to begin their career and say, well, this guy just can't play, or it's not going to work out for him, whatever. And I think we forget that some of the great players that we've seen, not only in this franchise, but in the NFL in general, it took them a while to get going. I mean, so much of it is just being in the right situation, but also just learning the league itself.
Well, Ballard would tell you pass rusher, too. He would tell you pass rusher is look at Jerry Hughes. And Jerry Hughes did not work out here at all and had opportunity. Then he goes to Buffalo, and he strikes gold. I mean, he was a great player for the Bills, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's still lingering
for
around
a long time, right?
In the NFL. So, Paye and then Bernard Ryman, I guess speaking of German, Austria area, those two guys, boy, if they can take jumps. For Ryman, it's year 2. For Paye, it's year 3. Those are massive areas
to
Dio? Support Anthony Richardson. Yeah, Dio, moving into year 3. He's probably more of a versatile pass rusher and can line up a little bit everywhere. And he's a guy I know is spring, and there's no full pads, but he was a guy that I noticed a little bit there during the spring off-season program. It also seems like eons ago, Jake, but I once again had you guys dialed in. Who's more dominant right now, Joey Chestnut or Alex Pillow?
Man, Pillow is absolutely, it's interesting. The race over the weekend, and you're right, that does feel like forever ago. The race over the weekend at Mid-Ohio, at the beginning of the race broadcast, Mark Janes asked each of us on the broadcast, like, okay, who's your pick to win? And I think Pillow was starting 4th. And somehow or another, the way it works on the track circuits when they do this, I'm always the last guy to pick. So then I'm like, well, everybody's gone. You know, like Herta and Kirkwood and Newgarden and McLaughlin, whatever. And nobody had said Palou. And I'm like, he's starting fourth and he's won, 2 races in a row or what, And so I'm like, well, Palou? The thing about Alex Palou, for those that are not fans of IndyCar, the thing about Alex Palou, who's from Barcelona, Spain, and a former series champion, when he gets a lead, when he gets his car out front, he is so precise when there's not cars around him that he just extends leads. I mean, he's up 3 seconds, then he's up 4, then he's up 5, and before you know it, you're like, oh my gosh, like he could probably make a pit stop and still maintain a lead. And that's what he's done. I mean, he's just put races away. He has a huge lead in terms of the season championship. A great performance. Pretty good race. Great performance by Palou, no question. And the other thing that happened in racing, again, it feels like forever ago, but we haven't talked since then. I was very skeptical, admittedly, at how, and Mark Dykton, I'll be curious your thoughts on this because I know that you are in touch with just the temperament of Chicago as a sports city. The visuals from a televised standpoint of the Chicago street course race in NASCAR were pretty awesome.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, the straightaways where you could see like the Museum of Science and Industry and the skyline in the background and Lakeshore.
Have the ratings come out yet? I would assume that's been one of the more watched NASCAR
It was.
races.
I thought I saw that it was the highest rated NASCAR race in like 3 or 4 years, outside of Daytona maybe. They did huge ratings, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I don't know what the city of Chicago, because I think there was hesitation from the city standpoint going into it from the people of Chicago. I don't know if their mind changed or not. I think most people that turned it on were like, okay, this is pretty cool. And
3-year contract, right?
Correct. And I would imagine that it will open the door for them to do more street course racing. I'll give NASCAR credit. I mean, I think NASCAR knew that they needed to shake things up a little bit because even though they still are, from a motorsport standpoint in the United States, the preeminent, ratings and revenue generator, it still wasn't where it was 10 or 15 years ago. And I think they knew that they had to do some things differently. And again, I mean, you have a guy that wins the race in his first NASCAR outing, and that's the first time that's happened since Johnny Rutherford in 1963. And as I said at the time, can you imagine in 1963 if you said to somebody, okay, the next time that a driver wins in his Stock Car Cup debut is going to be on a street course in Chicago, and it's going to be a guy from New Zealand that does it. Literally, a NASCAR fan would have looked at you and been like, what in the hell are you talking about?
And Scott McLaughlin and him are boys, right?
Yes, because Scott McLaughlin and I know I'm going to say his name incorrectly, and he deserves to have his name well known within the United States. Shane Van Gisbergen, I believe is how you say it. They both raced in the similar sports car V8 series throughout Australia, and I do think that's a similar style of car or feel as a Cup car, but it still is different enough that to be able to come in and win. He probably had an advantage just because of the style of race it was on a street course, but still, I don't think people realize that's a totally different feel of a car. Where he came from in the series he ran is probably pretty similar. If you look at McLaughlin, you could see that it took a year of just getting used to the feel of an Indy car before McLaughlin became what he is now, which is a week-in, week-out contender. I remember once hearing Dario Franchitti say when he went from IndyCar to stock car that it was like going from driving a Corvette to a school bus. So for SVG, as most people call him, to go from V8s to NASCAR is probably like going from driving, I don't know, like a passenger van to a school bus. It's a cousin thereof, and so therefore it wasn't a total learning curve. But that's a massive achievement and was very impressive.
Yeah, obviously the in-person crowds there and Mother Nature did not cooperate. But again, just purely from a visual standpoint, I think that would be an annual thing a lot of people would turn into.
It says the Grant Park 220 was the most viewed NASCAR Cup Sprint Series or NASCAR Series race on any network since the Daytona 500 in February at 8.173 million viewers.
Yeah. I think we just need to kind of sweep the in-person attendance under the rug and be like, wait, they're on Lakeshore?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I mean, that's
totally.
I was with a group of people. I mean, we were shocked when I was like, wait, that's where they're at?
Well, that's what was cool about it, Kevin, was when they were driving, you're like, wait a minute, I've driven that 1,000 times.
I've been stuck in traffic there for 2.5 hours.
No doubt.
So,
totally.
yeah, kudos to NASCAR and the city of Chicago for doing that. It sounds like a couple more years on that end. It is a steamy, humid Wednesday morning. Sweat, certainly, just by walking from the car here on this Wednesday. I'm Kevin Bone. He is Jake Query. Mark Dykton, as always. Again, Jannero Pargo going to join us here in about an hour. That is the Pacers Summer League coach, as we are, 3 days away from the first Summer League game for the Pacers. And a whole lot to get to in what was a busy Friday into Saturday, in general, just NBA weekend. But the Pacers made some moves that we will chat a whole lot about here on Kevin and Query. Hope you guys had a great and safe 4th of July. Thank you for spending your Wednesday morning with us. We'll be back on the other side. Kevin and Query, 93.5, 107.5.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Break them up, talking about the Cincinnati Redlegs back in first in the National League Central. 8-4 winners over the Washington Nationals. They have won 3 straight.
Play it, Mark. Come on.
No.
What?
No.
They won 18 of 22.
Cardinals, by the way, beaten by the Marlins 15-2. It was the Cubs over the Brewers 7-6. That kept the Reds in first. So thank you, Mark, from your.
Oh, you're welcome.
For your Cubs.
Yeah, exactly.
Meanwhile, in the race for PBR, and people ask me about this all the time when I go out and play. Hey, what's going on with Cute Fella? They lost yesterday to the Yankees 8-4. That puts Baltimore at 49-35, 1 game behind Mark's Arizona Diamondbacks, even though the Diamondbacks lost to the Mets 8-5.
See, I think you still have I still think you have the winning percentage.
No.
You still have the winning percentage lead.
Diamondbacks 50-36, Orioles 49-35.
Can I get an update on my A's? I believe they got a W yesterday.
The Oakland Athletics, I'm looking here, I'm scouring for an Oakland Athletics score.
Great pitcher's duel.
I don't see their score.
Oh, my gosh. Just unbelievable. No respect to my Athletics. 1-0 over the Tigers.
Oh, there it is right there. Sorry. You're right.
Your Arizona or your Baltimore Orioles still have a 583 win percentage compared to my Arizona Diamondbacks of 581.
Oh, I guess the loss different. The one loss difference there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, hey,
See?
you know what?
I didn't want to get out ahead of my skis.
PBR, baby.
Tiger, Usain Bolt, Serena Williams. Who else am I missing here? Alex Palou, I guess, right now. Joey Chestnut, modern dominance, absolutely is the epitome of that. Westfield's own, that's Joey Chestnut. 62 hot dogs in 10 minutes yesterday. Adversity thrown his way. It did not deter the GOAT. Here was Joey Chestnut afterwards on his 8th straight Nathan's hot dog eating contest.
What a roller coaster emotionally. They told us it was canceled. We weren't sure if we were going to eat today. And I'm just happy. It's 4th of July, and I got to eat some hot dogs and get a win.
It's 4th of July. I got to eat some hot dogs and got a win.
How do you not hear that and just smile at him saying battle of adversity?
That is absolutely beautiful. WNBA, by the way, Fever in action tonight. They're in Minnesota, 8 o'clock tip. Fever trying to snap a 4-game losing skid. They are 5-11 on the season. Speaking of the Fever, of course, the other franchise within that ownership group would be the Indiana Pacers. They made some moves taking place through free agency, and Tyrese Halliburton is a very wealthy man. We'll talk about what it's going to mean for the Pacers and how their roster rounds out, and thoughts on some of the pieces now. Are they done? We'll explain next.
Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hey, good morning to you on a Wednesday that feels like a Monday, but it's in fact closer to the weekend than you think. Jake Query here along with Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton here as well. It's Kevin and Query, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. Hope you had a wonderful Independence Day celebration, whether that be a one-day or multi-day event for you. For the Pacers, busy time as well. Over the course of the long weekend, we now know that Tyrese Halliburton is, and I can't believe, Kevin, and this just shows, I mean, we've been off for a few days and things kind of jumble together. Tyrese Halliburton agreeing in principle to a 5-year, $260 million contract extension with the Pacers. That $260 million, which is a staggering amount, obviously, that's if all incentives and different things come into play. So that's not a guarantee that he gets that full amount, but nonetheless.
It's what, like 207, right? Is that the
Yeah, and there's all kinds of like
all NBA type stuff.
Exactly.
Put on top of that.
But the important thing is, and there are several avenues that we're going to go with this, but that's item number one, Halliburton. Then you have the players coming in through free agency or through some maneuvering by Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan and the group. Obi Toppin coming in from New York, Bruce Brown Jr. from Denver. The players they lose, Chris Duarte, who apparently is traded for some second-round picks, and as well O'Shea Brissett, who signed as a free agent elsewhere. So I think the Pacers roster probably now is pretty set. And we'll begin with, Kevin, the Halliburton news before we get to talking about the free agents and how they fit in. For Halliburton, it's obviously a major win for the obvious reasons, and that is simply this. But I think it's what it represents. There has been, for the fan base of the Pacers, for probably the perception of the Pacers, you have... And I always base in sports things on precedent. And in this market, you had Reggie Miller, who was long the face of the franchise. But that was a slightly different era in terms of free agency, in terms of contractual, the money, everything else. There were just a lot of things that go into play. Reggie played his entire career here and became a legend for that. But since then, I think that you could safely say there have been 3 players, maybe 4, that at some point it was determined they were in fact the face of the franchise or the next Reggie Miller. People I think were longing for, thirsting for, striving for, getting that guy that they could buy their kids a jersey of that guy when the kid was in second grade and the kid would have it all the way up when they were in high school. Jermaine O'Neal would have been one. But Jermaine O'Neal, very good player, but it's difficult sometimes I think for that guy to be somebody that like the ball isn't going through on every single set. But more so, I think with Jermaine O'Neal, injuries came into play. There were just a number of things, the brawl obviously, but wonderful player. And I think retroactively, people now can look back and go, you know what, he was a really darn good player here, but just never fully grasped the whole franchise player thing. I think in his mind he did, but then you go to Paul George and Oladipo. We've gone over that a million times in what happened there, and that both of those two players grew into their NBA stardom before our very eyes, but then, Kevin, they outgrew it in their mind. They outgrew Indianapolis, and they felt like they had interests outside of basketball that Indianapolis could not facilitate for them. Be it entertainment, be it fashion, be it singing, be it, whatever it might be. The brand of PG, the brand of Oladipo. They wanted to go elsewhere. And I think that created in the fan base here, and probably to some extent the franchise, a PTSD. Kevin Pritchard in particular was heartbroken when Victor Oladipo left. And or when he, when they moved him, because he for the obvious reasons. So Tyrese Halliburton, I think there was hesitation of, are we going to get all excited and then get left at the altar again? And in fact, he grabbed their hand and said, I do. And I think people here should be excited by that.
Yeah, and I could have egg on my face, Jake, a handful of years down the road, but I firmly believe this is going to end a lot differently than the other two ended. Now the Pacers have got to do their part, and that's a big ask, particularly in a market like this where it's not easy to satisfy that that star, but I do think how Tyrese is wired, the Midwest connections, his appreciation for what Indiana provided him in that trade, I think it's going down the right path. And, of course, a lot can change over the next handful of years.
Well,
and,
I mean, for 5 years they got him, right?
Right. But you know how that is in the NBA. I mean, players tend to dictate things before the contract calls for an end or another decision to be made. To me, it's a contract that you obviously had to give him. I am curious, and we'll get into more of this, and when the details get out on the contract, is there a player option at all within this contract? I think that would be a big part of how things could go down a different path at some point. And when you look at it, and I'm not saying that Miles Turner and Buddy Hield aren't part of the next 2 to 3 years at all, but they do, both of them are nearing the end of their respective contracts. Turner's only 2 more years, and Hield is in a contract year. So you're going to have an ability next year to where you will still have a good amount of cap space, even with Halliburton's contract skyrocketing coming up next year. It's an extension. So this year he still plays on his rookie deal. Next year is when this thing kicks in. So you still will have an ability to try and attract someone next year. And I brought this up a couple weeks ago, and I'm not saying this is the end-all, be-all, but I think you heard from guys after games last season have a high appreciation for how Tyrese Halliburton plays the game of basketball. And I'm talking about opponents of the Pacers. And later this summer, he's going to play with Team USA. And it's not the Team USA team that we're necessarily used to of, insert your dream team sort of roster, and they're going for a gold medal in the Olympics. This is the World Cup. But there's still some pretty attractive names on that roster with Halliburton. And how will word of mouth play? And how will those guys kind of react to saying, oh, wow, I love playing with Halliburton. That could be fun. I am interested to see how all of that plays out. So the fact that, less than 18 months ago, Kevin Pritchard and a major hat tip to him, finally realized, okay, the 2 bigs is not working. So let's break up something that is not working. And in return, you traded away, and nothing against Sabonis, who's a wonderful player, but it just wasn't working here.
And just got a big extension in Sacramento, by the way.
Right. And in return, you now have a potential side of the building, perennial all-star type of player at a position that matters more than a big man. Like, that is absolutely monumental to trying to change the trajectory of your franchise. So I think over the weekend, it was just a reminder of, wow, how quickly things could change, how wonderful that move was. And now, and again, I know the pieces of Bruce Brown and Obi Toppin aren't necessarily going to be leading off SportsCenter by any means, but now the question becomes, what can you do as a franchise to organically grow it and then also continue to build around it to keep Halliburton and move the Pacers into more of a, hey, we're the feel-good story to we're a legit team in the Eastern Conference.
Okay, Bruce Brown, let's talk about that signing. To me, it is very significant. And it is, a lot of people asked over the course of the weekend, like, what do you think of the Bruce Brown signing? And my answer for you is Barry Bonds to right center. Major home run. And I'll tell you why. It doesn't jump out at you as an elite, it's not like he has the elite level free agent status in terms of name recognition or splash. But we'll go back to my term earlier about precedent. Oftentimes when a team wins a championship, their auxiliary pieces get plucked away because everybody wants a small piece of that championship. That guy's got a ring. He knows how to win. We need to look at that. They had a championship team, so all of their players are champions. We've got to get one of those and pull it off of the tree. In terms of the Indianapolis Colts, which is the one championship team of modern era that we can relate to here in the city of Indianapolis, I'll go to Cato June. Cato June was a wonderful player for the Colts. Good player on a championship team. And then he goes elsewhere. I believe it was Tampa that signed him as a free agent and had high expectation for him because he was a guy that was a starter on a championship team and was a wonderful player for the Colts and fit perfectly for what the Colts wanted to do and their blueprint for a championship and the schemes that they ran. But then Cato June gets plugged into a system where now all of a sudden they are expecting an elevated role from him, and a little bit different system. And he did not have the same footing that he had as an Indianapolis Colt. Great player, great guy. But there are other players for the Colts that you see that with, and you see this all the time. When players are on a championship-winning team and they go elsewhere, and people assume that because they were guy 4 or 5 or 6, well, but he was on a championship team, he's really a 2 or a 3, and they try to elevate him or get him outside of his role. Bruce Brown Jr. for the Denver Nuggets was a guy that was at times a lockdown defender who could hit open shots if it came to him, and you didn't have to design through him, but he could, in an auxiliary role, score for you and give you pop offensively. But most importantly, he could play multiple positions and guard. And the Pacers had an opening on their roster and went out and sought for a guy that could at times be a lockdown defender, that could hit open shots when not facilitated through them, but if it rotates through and they have the ability to score within the flow of a set, but could play multiple areas, notably on the defensive end. Bruce Brown Jr. is a huge signing for the Indiana Pacers because they're going to ask him to do exactly what he did in Denver and not try to elevate him beyond that, but rather keep him within his exact comfort zone, number one. And number two, you could say that they overpaid for him, and in the open market that might be the case, except for the fact that he is bringing exactly to the Pacers what the Pacers need. He is worth that value to Indiana, more so than maybe to Phoenix or Atlanta or Portland or whoever. He's worth that to the Pacers. And Kevin, most importantly, Bruce Brown Jr. does really, really well exactly what the Pacers really sucked at.
Yeah,
And he fills that exact void. He is the perfect blueprint for what it was in the terms of player of the piece of the Trivial Pursuit pie that they needed.
Yeah, if you're going to overpay, which I say that in quotes, do it for your weaknesses.
Correct.
And do it for a modern, versatile, kind of interchangeable piece, and I do think that's what Bruce Brown brings. I also think we lose sight of this at times, and I know I've brought it up before, but this is a franchise that hasn't won a playoff game in a handful of years. Look around the NBA. Over 2/3 of the league have won a playoff game since the Pacers last did. They haven't won a series in almost a decade. Bruce Brown, a guy that took his game to another level in the playoffs, comes over here and all of a sudden walks into a locker room where he looks around. He's like, guys, have any of you even played in the playoffs? Have any of you even played in the playoffs recently? Like, no one in that locker room knows how to win at a real level, or at least haven't done it in recent years. Turner's case, you got to go way back to early in his NBA career. Obviously, Halliburton and Buddy Hield certainly don't come from a winning culture at all. Matherin is still young. Some of these guys are still young in that realm. And then, when I say overpay in quotes, I think people lose sight of, and this is more of an indictment probably on Kevin Pritchard's poor drafting than anything leading into this. The reason why you had to overpay is because you had to get to a salary floor. I mean, there is a salary floor. I think the Pacers, if I'm not mistaken, I think they entered this offseason with $32 million in cap space. And again, we'll have Scott Agnes on tomorrow to double check this. I believe they had to get to 18 of that $32 million just to get to that NBA requirement that teams have to pay from a salary cap floor standpoint. And again, the reason why the Pacers had to do that is because they swung and missed on Holiday and Leaf and Goga and Duarte and all of them. So you haven't had to pay anybody on your roster any significant money here in recent years outside of Turner. And so that's why you had to pay Bruce Brown so much. When the Bruce Brown move was made, I tweeted out a couple of thoughts, and I feel like they're relevant to share here. Versatile with a presence at the end of the floor where the Pacers stink. He brings defense, the Pacers stink there. He took his game to another level in the playoffs and finals. That stands out to me. This isn't a guy that when the lights got bright, he kind of wilted. He rose. I mean, he was big for Denver in those playoff games. This is the part that I think we cannot lose sight of. And I know this gets a little into the nerd cap side of it, but the Pacers gave him a 2-year contract where the second year is a team option.
Correct, meaning if it doesn't work out, they're out.
So this is like a pseudo contract year for him with this 1-year deal. So you're not paying him massive amounts of money. When you say overpay, I guess it's an overpay for 1 year. And again, I don't necessarily agree with that. But I think this is very smart and wise to keep it on the short term. If you want to maneuver after a couple years, you can certainly do that. So I thought that might have been the best aspect to all of this. It's that you gave him a 2-year deal. The second year is a team option. If things go swimmingly well, boom, you pick up that option, and he's an important piece for you. I understand some people push back and say, oh, you got a log jam at the 2 and 3, and where does he exactly fit? He's 6'4". I think his wingspan kind of makes up for a little bit of lack of height. There is a lot of questions to be answered about lineup and fit and all of that. But if I'm going to have a log jam anywhere, it's better to have a log jam at guards and forwards than it is point guards and centers. And in recent years, the Pacers have had way too much of a log jam with point guards and centers.
We have all had that experience where you put on a jacket you haven't worn in a while, you reach in the pocket, and lo and behold, there's like a 20 in there, and you're like, oh, found money, huge bonus.
20. Gosh, I'm just hoping for a golden dollar.
A 10, a 5.
That jacket fits.
Well, that might have happened, actually, for Kevin Pritchard and the Pacers over the course of the weekend. We'll explain that and then talk to the guy that's going to head up their Summer League team. That conversation in 33 minutes on Kevin and Query.
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
So, Kevin, to your point, when you reach in the jacket that you hadn't worn in a while or a pair of basketball shorts, whatever it might be, and you reach in the pocket and you're like, oh, gosh, there's a dollar bill in here. Whether it be a 20, 50, 10, 5, whatever it might be. For Kevin Pritchard and the Pacers, I guess it really depends on, they have yet to see which currency, which denomination of currency it is that they just found in their pocket. But seemingly, it could be 100 and it could be a single. But Kevin Pritchard realized, you know what, I've got like a surplus of second-round picks. Why don't I just take 2 of them? And, you know what, I didn't realize I have these things laying around. Gosh, here's a guy in New York that's a former lottery pick, and Obi Toppin, who's an elite-level athlete, who's 6'9", who has a 42-point game in his resume in the NBA, and by New York Knicks standards, because he was a lottery pick, is considered in New York a bust. And once the city of New York and the Knicks franchise is done with you, there's really no going back. However, as we talked about earlier with Romeo Langford, you can get a second lease on life with franchise number 2. You start getting into franchise number 3, it becomes more difficult. For Obi Toppin, this is franchise number 2. Is this suddenly, is he going to be like Jordan Nwora, where all of a sudden you put him out there and you're like, oh, wow, okay, now that he's getting minutes, he can play? This is a guy that the Pacers essentially, I know that they gave up draft capital with second-round picks, 2 of them. But for the most part, it was a free acquisition for all intent and purposes. And it may be that he washes out and is nothing more than, a project. But there's very little risk involved and potentially very high reward because he's an elite-level athlete. He could probably play pick and roll with Tyrese Halliburton, which I think is exactly what they're looking for. And he gives them some flexibility, again, defensively on the wing, which I think is what you want because of his athleticism. To me, this could potentially be one of those moves. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be the case, Kevin, but it could potentially be one of those moves that 3 years from now we look back on and go, man, what a steal. Or it could be one that you go, it didn't work out, but whatever. They gave up 2 second-rounders for him. What's the risk in it, right?
Yeah, I go back to Mark's analogy and think, God, let's just hope the jacket fits after a holiday weekend.
I get that.
I'm with you on that, Mark. I've said this before about the Colts. Always kick the tires on former first-round picks. And in the NBA, I guess the lexicon of that, I feel the same way about lottery picks, particularly, and I know I harp on this a lot, but I think it's so relevant, especially when you're in a market like this, where you just don't have an inability to attract big names on a routine basis. You have to do creative things to try and find that sort of talent. I mean, hell, look at the teams right now in small or a little bit of smaller markets that have won. Denver got Jokic in the second round. Milwaukee got Giannis outside of the lottery. Like, you've got to do things in a little bit of outside of the box way and try and take a chance. And again, taking a chance sounds like it's some huge risk. Jake, to your point, go up to a Pacers fan on the street and ask them the last 5 second-round picks the Pacers have made.
Right. I mean, they'll know.
Mojave King. I mean, he's draft and stash all of a sudden. We'll probably never see the guy ever again.
Right.
Like, it's just 2 second-round picks. And I think it's important to point out 2 things about Toppin. One, he comes from a place where there was a logjam for minutes. Julius Randle was understandably always going to be the guy at that kind of power forward spot. And then 2, and the Pacers have benefited greatly from this. If you look at the Pacers roster right now, with Halliburton, Jalen Smith, Aaron Nesmith, you brought up Jordan Nwora, Jake, and now Toppin. That's 5 guys from that COVID draft of 2020. That was a very weird offseason.
That's a really good point.
It was a very weird, I think Dayton fans, and I know there are some buddies of mine that are Dayton fans. Jake, remember, they were the number 1 team in the nation for chunks of that season. They were number 1 seed. Obi Toppin was the college basketball player of the year, and then all of a sudden, boom. So now you're saying, all right, let's get you here. in Neesmith's case, it was a logjam with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and in Toppin's case, it was a Julius Randle in front of him. And I think at the bare minimum, he is this high energy player for you that Tyrese Halliburton can find and throw alley-oops to. And for 2 second-round picks, sure. And to your point, Jake, if he hits on it and he gets back to any sort of lottery pick hype, which the Pacers probably fell into a trap with Toppin late in the season this past year when the Knicks were resting guys for the playoffs, Obi Toppin started twice against the Pacers and had over 30 points in each of those 2 games. So when he has started, he has put up big numbers, and he actually has shot in the 3 decently well in those games. That's kind of been a bugaboo for him in his NBA career. But I am totally good on taking a chance in a contract year, so he's going to be extremely motivated for this guy to come here and try and show a little bit more, assuming the minutes will rise. And I'll go back to that Colts analogy there. I mean, think about the Colts kicking the tires on first-round picks. I know the last handful of years for the Colts has not been anywhere near what you would like for as a fan, but you think about the 2 times they've made the playoffs in the Chris Ballard era. I can point to 2 former first-round picks that the Colts went out in free agency and made a move for that were very impactful players for those respective teams. It wasn't for very long, but they were very impactful. In 2018, it was Eric Ebron, and in 2020, it was Xavier Rhodes. 2 guys that weren't working out for different reasons in their previous stops.
Right. Second leash, right?
The Colts said, all right, let's see what you can do here, and boom, you're able to hit on that. So for the Pacers case in the NBA world, and when you're in this market, you try on a former lottery pick, you see what happens. I don't have a great feel for how the minutes should distribute between him and Jarris Walker. There are certainly limitations to his game, but at the bare minimum, he is a high-flying athlete that has at times shown he can score in this league. Former top 10 pick. And obviously Tyrese Halliburton, you saw his tweet over the weekend. He seems to be a big fan of it. I am very good with this sort of move for Obi Toppin.
Mark, I can't recall when we were talking about Jarris Walker at the end of last week. Didn't we? Do we know now his jersey number? Is he number 1? Is that right?
Number 1 is
Yep.
Yep.
See, that's disappointing for me because wouldn't it be perfect for Obi-Wan?
Mm-hmm.
I'll look at that.
I mean, wouldn't that be perfect?
Well, I mean, the Pacers have a perfect candidate if they do a Star Wars night.
Yeah, totally.
Certainly on that. Did you see?
Isn't Obi-Wan Kenobi like 700 years old?
I wouldn't know.
Did you see the?
I have no idea.
That should be George Hill's nickname, I guess.
I think Dustin DePierac had this. He had a great feature on Jarris Walker, and I don't know, maybe I'm fallen in love a little bit too much with this story, and maybe it's a product of the environment we live in 2023, where this is kind of the rare story, and so that's why it caught my eye. But Dustin DePierac in his feature on Walker, he brought up an anecdote from Walker's one season at Houston where Jarris Walker was benched for the final, I think it was 11 or 12 minutes in a game against Central Florida this past season by Kelvin Sampson. Now, why is that relevant? Well, think about Central Florida. Taylor Hendricks becomes an NBA lottery pick. Obviously, that would be a game that you think Jarris Walker would have circled on the calendar. Not to mention, you just don't want to be benched for the final 12 minutes of any game. But he struggled. He was like 0 for 5 from the floor, didn't have a good game at all. And Jarris Walker's dad texted Sampson after the game. And can you imagine? You're
there's danger enough when Kelvin Sampson starts texting, but yes, go ahead.
insert your jokes there. He texted Sampson and said something to the effect of like, "Thanks for coaching my son." And in today's climate, I have a feeling when you have 5-star freshmen that get benched for upwards of 11 or 12 minutes by their college coach, I don't think many parents are going to respond in that manner. And again, I might be making too much of the story, but to me that shows me how Jarris Walker's been raised and how he gets coaching. And it kind of falls in the Benedict Mathurin trap. I mean, Mathurin, by all accounts, and we'll talk to Jannero Pargo here in 15 minutes to get more into this. I mean, Benedict Mathurin is obsessed with coaching and wants to be coached. And I think in Walker's case, he's got of that, of like, okay, he's been raised the right way. He's coachable like Mathurin. It's a little thing, but I do think the makeup of the Pacers, you've got guys that are wired in the right way. And certainly I think our audience heard me talk about it last week. I guess it would have been 2 Fridays ago now when the Walker draft pick was made. The fact that you're a 5-star freshman and you're willing to be coached by Kelvin Sampson, that to me shows you that you're not just looking for an easy way out and taking 9 credits in your first semester and saying I'm doing anything I can just to get to the NBA as quick as possible.
You know, I saw like a photo shoot with Jarace Walker and Ben Shepherd, the 2 first-round picks for the Pacers.
Do you like 26 for Shepherd? That's his jersey number?
That's the number, right? That was his selection, correct?
That was, yeah.
I wonder if that is what number was he in college?
I thought he was 25, so that would be Jalen Smith here.
The interesting thing to me, Jarace Walker played 1 year of college basketball, and Ben Shepherd is, a 4-year guy. Ben Shepherd looks 12, and Jarace Walker looks 35. Like, the two of them were standing together, and literally I was looking at it going, it looks like in Pulp Fiction, Jarace Walker looks like Samuel L. Jackson, like a grown man, right? And then Ben Shepherd looks like the kid, who's the kid that they end up, I hate to say it, shooting in the car.
Oh, jeez.
You know what I'm talking about, though, in Pulp Fiction.
Happy return from the 4th of July here,
but the one kid they know, like in the room, when they go in the room, the one kid that they know. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Turn.
No, come on. You guys know what I'm talking about.
You got into this hole. Dig yourself out of it.
What's the kid's name?
I got nothing.
You guys act like you've never seen Pulp Fiction. Have you never seen Pulp Fiction, Mark?
I've got no idea on the name.
I haven't seen Pulp Fiction in years. I don't remember.
Somebody has to know. Send me a tweet. They go into the house when the kids are eating the burgers, and there's the one kid that he leaves with them. They clearly knew him ahead of time. He was like their informant, and then they're in the car, and they're talking, and then John Travolta's gun accidentally goes off, and then they got to go to the Wolf to clean the car. Is it Marvin? Is that the kid's name? Yeah, Marvin. Thank you. Quincy, thank you. That's who Ben Shepherd looks like Marvin.
There we go.
And Jarace Walker looks like Samuel L. Jackson.
So are you saying Jarace Walker you want off the bus first and Ben Shepherd you want off the bus last?
Yes. Jarace Walker, I'm telling you, like just looking at him.
I enjoyed hearing from Casey Alexander. I guess that would have been, last Tuesday, Mark, that we had him on, the Belmont coach.
Uh-huh.
One of the first things he said to us about Ben Shepherd was Ben made his mark as a defender first. And if you look at Ben Shepherd's career at Belmont, he averaged like 2 points a game as a freshman. So he obviously wasn't getting on the floor for offensive reasons at that point, or I should say maybe solely offensive reasons. And I guess we're still waiting on exact details with the Chris Duarte trade of what exactly Sacramento's going to be sending back in return for him. But I just look at Shepherd and think, okay, Duarte's time is done, and Ben Shepherd now becomes what you hope Duarte was.
Any other Pulp Fiction characters you want to associate with current Pacers or Colts players?
You got a Mojave King reference.
Who's the gimp in your
I realize,
wheelhouse?
okay, see, you've seen it. I realize Pulp Fiction was out 30 years ago, but it's a pretty relevant pop culture film, is it not? Mm-hmm. And I didn't even like it. I thought the movie sucked, and I thought, like, the most overrated aspect of Pulp Fiction is 90% of the people that walked out of it were like, dude, that was the coolest movie I've ever seen. When in reality, they had no idea what was going on because it was non-sequential, and most of them didn't realize that actually what happened was the fact that the main character guy, I forget his name, sold his soul, and he sold his soul to the devil, and he sent in his 2 henchmen to retrieve the soul back, which actually was inside of a briefcase, and that's why it was so shiny and bright, but you couldn't look at it because that meant you were looking into his soul. Very few people grasp that. But anyway, I digress.
Pulp Fiction rabbit hole we just went down.
And I've only seen the movie like 3 times.
Welcome back from vacation, Kevin. Here we go.
We got some hot takes for Pulp Fiction.
Do you have a starting lineup? I have no idea. Like, if you were going to tell me right now, what is a Pacers starting lineup, I'm not sure if I have, like, a definite one.
I don't know that they do, right?
So, I guess let's start here. Do we have definites? Halliburton, Turner, unquestionably, correct?
Agreed.
Okay. Is Matherin in that group? Yeah. To me, he should be, but
I'm not certain now that. I mean.
Okay, let's just Let's just play this out. Halliburton.
Yep.
Turner, and let's throw Matherin in there. Let's call Matherin a 3, a small forward.
Okay.
Who's your 2 and who's your 4? Is your 2 Buddy Hield, or is it Bruce Brown?
I think it's Bruce Brown.
Okay. And then your 4 would be either Jarris Walker or Obi Toppin?
I would go with Jarris Walker.
Okay, so then your bench unit would say Heald and Toppin with
Neesmith,
McConnell, Neesmith.
Well, you got to throw in Did you say Nembhard?
Nembhard, Wara, Shepard. Whew. I mean,
yeah.
I know I said this last right after the draft, but you look at the Pacers roster right now.
I think Shepard and Wara probably work their way in rotation to find out which one is going to be in front of the other. Does that make sense?
It's a good feeling, I think, for Pacers fans to have, to go through that exercise and look at it and think, wow, those are like 10-ish guys that I'd feel pretty comfortable with any of them on the floor. I don't look at any of them and think, ooh, and like we didn't even really mention Isaiah Jackson. You know, is Daniel Tice still on this team next year? Like I do think there are a couple fringe questions, and the Pacers have cap space still. They can make an ancillary move, and I almost think the entire NBA right now is on a little bit of a freeze. It's like, okay, no one's going to do anything until Damian Lillard's thing plays out. That's the next big domino of like, all right, everybody pause. Let's see what happens with Damian Lillard, and then let's re-up with our chats.
Aren't there people that are kind of pulling for Portland in the Damian Lillard situation?
I don't have this great disdain for what Damian Lillard did. I think he gave Portland a hell of a run, and I think he deserves to be in the situation he is right now.
I mean, I agree, but he signed a deal, right? I mean, what's he have left on it?
Yeah, but again, there's part of a franchise where you have got to build a winner, too. They just drafted 3 overall.
He's the NBA version of Mike Trout to me, where he's such a great player, but a lot of people don't see him because of the team he plays on and the time zone he's in.
That's a good analogy. Yeah. I mean, how long has he been there? It's got to be close to a decade.
But still, I mean,
does every player have to stay in the franchise for 15 years?
Well, I have nothing against Damian Lillard, Kevin, but I think there are a lot of people that are like, yeah, you don't have to stay there forever, but you should honor your contract. You signed a deal, you stayed through it, and that's why it's called free agency.
Yeah, I hear that side of it. I also think we're a little bit of prisoners for putting this immense burden on people that say, you have to win a title or else you don't amount to anything.
I get it.
Look at how people sum up Chris Paul's career right now.
But if you're a Pacers fan, it's in your best interest to see that Portland rides it out. You know what I mean? Like you should root for probably the franchise to get the best.
If Tyrese Halliburton plays here for a decade, I think we all can say, good job, Halliburton. Good job, Pacers.
Damian Lillard's a player option next year, so he's a free agent if he wants to be next season.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're Damian Lillard, just play it out and then go into free agency.
Honestly, he's given Portland the benefit of the doubt now because he's saying, hey, cash in on me. Yeah. They're going to get a hell of a return, and now they're going to have Shaedon Sharpe and a Scoot Henderson, and Jeremy Grant, I guess, is still on the roster, as awkward as that.
It's one thing, and I don't know, I'm not in the room, right? It's one thing for him to tell them that he prefers a trade. It's another to demand a trade. So I guess I should back that up a little bit. I hope he doesn't demand a trade or like, I'm not going to play for you again. If he is simply saying, look, it's probably in your best interest to trade me because I'm going to opt out next year, that's different. That's different. But if it's a standoff and he is contractually bound to the team, especially as a middle market team, I would hope in that case I would side with the franchise. And I get it. It's all, I totally understand it, but you sign a contract. I'm just different in that regard, I guess.
O'Shea Brissett to the Celtics. That is the lone free agent. So if the Pacers didn't have a lot of free agents, George Hill, James Johnson. We'll see if any of those guys do return. And again, we're still waiting kind of official details. I was talking with Tony East last night. I'm like, still nothing on this Chris Duarte trade? We still haven't seen any sort of exact return value for Duarte.
I thought it was
Sacramento.
2 number 2s, right?
Has that been reported?
So basically, if that's the case, I thought it was 2 second rounders, future second rounders.
Tony said we hadn't heard anything. So
and if that's the case, then I thought I saw, Kevin, it was like a 2027 and 2028 second rounder or some distant second rounders. But if that's the case, then basically they traded Duarte for Toppin because they sent out second rounders to New York.
Do you think it's just out of the basement today for Joey Chestnut or out of the attic as well?
I would say
I'm trying to get back to normalcy.
Probably just the basement. I would think that he.
Any performance-enhancing drugs to help that, or do you think it's just all natural?
Well, I would. You know what? There could be.
Does he have to pee in a cup today?
I mean, there might be
part
some
of
road
rules?
construction
Might not have
challenges.
a choice in that matter.
Don't you feel like that you eat 62 hot dogs that could lead to, just like a kind of like a jackknifed semi on the interstate and everything gets backed up and and then you're waiting and it's very uncomfortable.
I think you're just laying in a tub letting water hit you this morning. Like you're just laying there like, I don't think I'm doing anything today.
It has to be, honestly, like kidding aside, I can't imagine it. Like I know that Joey Chestnut, who is a super nice dude and lives here now and is, pretty well known around town.
Parade at Grand Park for him today, right?
Yeah, that's right. I know that he goes and sees doctors. I mean, he and I have talked about it. He goes and he's not just doing these things without any sort of like medical, supervision, if you will.
Yeah, Mottman was front row yesterday.
But that can't be good for your body.
Well, of course not.
Like to fast for 4 days and then eat en masse and then fast again. I mean, and he's not. I mean, it's amazing that he doesn't look like 400 pounds or something. I mean, with
18,414 calories for Joe Chestnut yesterday. 62 hot dogs in 10 minutes. Mark, can you play that audio of his overcoming of adversity when Mother Nature tried to rear her ugly head?
What a roller coaster emotionally. They told us it was canceled. We weren't sure if we were going to eat today, and I'm just happy. It's 4th of July, and I got to eat some hot dogs and get a win.
We didn't know if we were going to eat today. Like as if that's the only way he's allowed to eat. Sorry.
Oh, man.
Because think about it. He's right though. If you fasted to get yourself ready, and then they say we're actually doing this tomorrow, do you fast another day?
Well, do you fast? Because I always thought he said that you have to still kind of eat to keep your stomach expanded.
Yeah,
you don't really fast.
I remember having this conversation with him once. He said, and I think I have this right, you eat something similar to the amount that you're planning to eat in the contest 24 hours before. And then you fast and you eat. I forget what the exact food is you eat to keep your stomach expanded in that 24-hour period. So your stomach is then built to withstand it.
No bueno, man. No bueno.
We know. You've checked out of the shrimp cocktail eating contest.
Okay.
Jannero Pargo, Pacers Summer League coach, joined us in a couple of other Joey Chestnut notes before we get to the morning checkdown. Other accomplishments on his LinkedIn. Hard-boiled eggs, 141 of them in 8 minutes. 55 glazed donuts in 8 minutes. 121 Twinkies in 6 minutes.
By the way, to clarify, it's in Pulp Fiction, it's not Brad. Brad is the guy that has the big brain. It's Marvin. Marvin is the kid in the room that they knew previously that clearly tipped them off to what was going on, that they leave with Marvin. That's who I'm talking about.
I thought we said Marvin.
Yeah, I know, but several people are saying, no, you're wrong, it's Brad.
Can you imagine the brain freeze with this one?
Brad's the kid eating the burger.
25 and a half ice cream sandwiches in 6 minutes.
Zero chance.
My brain would be frozen for a year.
Do you know that if you get brain freeze, if you're eating ice cream and you get the quick ice cream headache, put your tongue on the roof of your mouth. Hold it there, it goes away.
That works? Okay. Good to note. A quick morning check down right here.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
We're going to talk Pacers Summer League coming up with Jannero Pargo, who is their head coach. So we'll do it quick. Reds over the Nationals yesterday, 8-4. It was the Marlins over the St. Louis Cardinals.
Here come the Red Legs.
15-2. Reds back in first in the NL Central. Cubs helped them out by beating the Brewers 7-6. Orioles, losers to the Yankees, 8-4, still a percentage point ahead of the Arizona Diamondbacks in our race for PBR. Mets beat the Diamondbacks yesterday, 8-5. Athletics 1-0 over Detroit. And it was the Indianapolis Indians, 8-5 winners over the Memphis Redbirds.
Fever back in action tonight, trying to end a 4-game losing streak. Couple of other things of note. Alex Pillow won in Mid-Ohio. His dominance here is really unforeseen in this modern era of IndyCar. 3 straight wins, 4 of 5. Could easily have won the Indy 500. Darn impressive. Toronto a week from Sunday for the IndyCar schedule. And, yeah, I think that covers everything. Pacers Summer League chatter with Jannero Pargo on the other side.
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, let's head to the Payless Liquors hotline. He is the head coach of the Indiana Pacers coming up in Summer League action. First game Saturday evening. I believe it's 8 Eastern here back on, for us, that matters here from a viewing standpoint. I believe ESPN2 as well. Jannero Pargo, the Pacers assistant, who again will lead the Summer League team coming up here for a handful of games out in Vegas, joins us now. Coach, good morning to you. Are we packed and ready to go to Vegas?
Good morning. We are packed, and we got practice today, and then we're getting out of here.
Coach, I'm really curious about this, and I appreciate your time this morning. Let's begin with this in terms of coaching Summer League. You know, in terms of the mindset, like how much does the organization, I guess, guide you on how they want you to coach? And I know that sounds weird, but hopefully you can get what I'm saying there in terms of, you know, it's got to be 50-50, right? I mean, you're wanting guys to develop, but you're also wanting them to be in situations where they're learning, winning, and working together. How do you approach it from a coaching standpoint, just in terms of the roster, the minutes that you're allocating, so that everybody kind of is getting an equal evaluation?
That's a great question. Yeah, and it is kind of 50-50. It's a growth development process, not only for the players, but for our coaches as well. We're all doing new things, having new responsibilities. So it's a growth and learning experience for coaches, but also our players. Put them in different situations that we maybe want to look at during the regular season. The guys that for sure that are going to be on our roster, going to get those guys a lot of minutes. And like I said, just help those guys develop by getting in-game action. And it's a two-way street. Rick and the organization is doing a great job of allowing me to kind of put in some of my own basketball things. So it's been a great experience so far.
Again, Jannero Pargo is with us. He's coaching the Pacers Summer League here coming up Saturday night, their first game. You mentioned some of those guys. You mentioned kind of coachability. I think Benedict Mathurin would probably fall into that category. What was it that you guys wanted Mathurin to work on as he headed off for his first kind of real offseason in the NBA? And then now that he is going to be with you for, we'll see how many games out there in Vegas, how has he returned and how's he looking here in year 2?
Well, some of the things we wanted him to work on was just his ball handling, being able to create plays for others. He's a heck of a one-on-one player. We also want to put him in some ISO situations and get some numbers from that. He's come back hungry. I think someone asked the question, is he trying to win or is he just trying to work on his game? And he kind of gave him a stare like, no, I'm playing. I'm trying to win. So his attitude, his leadership has been great. And we're looking forward to seeing what we're going to see from him this summer.
You know, you played Jannero. Jannero Pargo is our guest. He's going to be coaching the Pacers in Summer League. You played in the league, and you had a very circuitous route to get there. I mean, you came into the league. You played for, I think, 7 different franchises. You played in different countries. You've played in the G League. You played where there was opportunity. Does that give you a more unique perspective than some coaches in terms of being able to see somebody that might be playing in the Pacers Summer League that everybody else overlooks, and you can connect with and see that vision of that guy has what it takes. That guy has the resiliency that's necessary. How much does your experience as a player help you evaluate as a coach?
I think it helps tremendously. Just seeing a guy's attitude and work ethic when he's not playing. I think that says a lot about a player because it's easy to come in the gym and work hard knowing that you're going to get minutes and you're going to get shot attempts. But when you don't know and things are not necessarily going your way, how do you respond? How do you react? How do you work? And I think when you have a guy that's doing all the right things, saying all the right things, has the right attitude, and then when his number is called, he's able to go out and perform. Those are the kind of guys you're looking for in the summer league, guys who can fill up the end of your roster, high character guys that knows what it takes to be ready to play at all times.
I do want to get back to the Pacers just a second, but Jake's question kind of made me think of this. You obviously played in the league for over a decade. Who is the player that you don't think got enough credit, whether it was on your own team or an opposing player, that you feel like from the media doesn't give enough credit for how that player was?
First guy came to mind is the Luol Deng. Luol Deng was an incredible leader. Worked very hard. Turned himself into a heck of a player. I think averaged close to maybe 20 points a game, and he was one of the leaders of those Chicago Bulls teams. Led by Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah. Those guys get a lot of credit, but I think Luol Deng was one of the guys who was a leader on that team, a great scorer on that team, and probably doesn't get enough credit.
Will you, over the course of the summer, Coach, will you come up with, or just for example, has Kevin Pritchard or Rick Carlisle, Chad Buchanan, at any point do they ask you to, or do you set up scenarios or systems or plays specifically for a particular player? So in other words, if you go into a game, could you say, okay, player X, I want to see how he responds late in game when plays are going through him, and then tomorrow we'll do that for player Y, and tomorrow does it get that calculated, or is it more just let them play and evaluate from there?
Yeah, kind of the way our system is set up during the regular season is there's not a lot of play calls. We kind of just put our guys in situations to play the game of basketball, and we allow those guys freedom to do that. And so we want to do the same thing here in Summer League and just kind of evaluate how guys are picking up on the different ways of how to play the game of basketball. I will tell you one thing that we are doing is we're trying to put Ben Mathen in ISO situations, and and maybe looking at the numbers on that, because he's a guy who wants the ball in all kind of situations, and he's really good at ISO situations. So we wanted to look at the numbers and show him the numbers and let him know that, okay, the numbers are great. We're going to give you some ISO situations, or the numbers are not so great. So let's continue to move the ball and play the game the right way. So that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at this summer.
Interesting. Jannero Pargo is with us here again, Pacers assistant. He'll be leading the Summer League out in Vegas coming up Saturday night, a handful of games for the Pacers and their rookie group, plus a couple of young guys. Let's go with the first-round picks, if you don't mind, Coach. Your first in-person impressions of, let's start with Jarris Walker.
A very versatile player. The guy can guard. He can dribble, pass, and shoot. Long arms, athletic. There's nothing on the floor that he can't do. So we got to find ways to get him involved. Talented, great personality. Looking forward to see what he can do this summer out in Vegas. Go ahead, Ben Shepherd.
Yeah.
Just a happy guy. Great energy, great effort. I think defensively he's going to surprise a lot of people. He can really shoot the basketball, plays the game at a high level. So we're looking forward to seeing him as well. Two great rookies.
Coach, do you think it's a bigger challenge? Most players, I think, when I watch an NBA game, I sit there and I watch and I think to myself, even the 12th guy on a bench is probably the greatest player. There are two guys in a bar right now talking about how they saw that guy play in high school, right? Like they're the greatest player everywhere they've been along the way. Occasionally, you do get guys that make it to the league because they've been blue-collar guys throughout the course of their career and not necessarily natural scorers. Do you find it harder, which is the bigger challenge, I guess, for guys that have been Swiss Army knives but not great scorers to have to learn to develop an offensive game, or for guys that are natural scorers to have to learn to do the other things if there are other scorers on the floor with them?
That's another great question. I'll give you guys a quick story. I played with Tracy McGrady in Atlanta, and at this point in his career, he was playing maybe 15 to 17 minutes, coming off the bench, and didn't know where his shot attempts were coming from. And so I asked him, which is harder, being Tracy McGrady now or being Tracy McGrady in Orlando and Houston, where you had to come out and score 27 points a night, and the ball was coming to you every time, and you had to perform. And he said to me, it's definitely harder, playing 15, 17 minutes a night, not knowing where shots are coming from, and having to do the little things. So, I think it's harder to come to this league as a scorer and then have to change your game to being a role player and, playing defense, taking charges, and doing all the little things.
Coach, last one for me, and again, Jannero Pargo is with us here, Pacers assistant. He's got the responsibility of leading the Summer League in Vegas. Isaiah Jackson, obviously a big year for him. Anytime you reach kind of this point of your rookie contract, the importance of these years kind of rise. Certainly when you guys draft him, you knew there was some molding that needed to be done. What have you seen from Isaiah here in camp as he enters a pretty critical year?
Isaiah's been great. A lot of leadership. I've seen him, pulling our big rookies aside and teaching them things we taught him a couple of years ago. So his leadership has been great. On the floor, he's been everywhere, catching lobs, blocking shots. Just his voice, his presence on the defensive end, it's been night and day. So he's been great so far this summer, and we're looking for big things from him this summer.
Now, Coach, my last question for you. If I'm not mistaken, and you correct me if I'm wrong, when you were at Arkansas, you overlapped between Nolan Richardson and Stan Heath. Am I correct in that?
No. I was only with Nolan.
Okay, that's okay. So Stan Heath would have been right after, I guess, you left. But I'm glad because Nolan Richardson was the guy I was going to ask you about. I absolutely loved, when I was in high school, is when Arkansas really burst through with Nolan Richardson on the map with Lee Mayberry and Todd Day and Oliver Miller and 40 Minutes of Hell and all that. I loved Nolan Richardson as a coach because I just thought he was a defensive innovator of the fact that, like, if you weren't going to go out there and be a bulldog and play for 40 minutes, you weren't getting on the floor. I'm just curious if your best Nolan Richardson story or just what kind of guy he was as a coach.
You know what? I thought Nolan was a great coach. He wasn't just stuck in his ways. I think offensively, my senior year, we must have tried three different offenses because, we couldn't get anything to work. So for him to be flexible to change his offense three different times, just trying to give us the best opportunity to win games, that really stuck with me. A quick story is, we would come into the gym for practice, and Nolan would just put 40 minutes on the clock, throw a ball out, and say, "Okay, let's go." And we would just practice for 40 minutes. And we asked him about our defensive philosophy, and he said, "Just be like dogs with rabies."
Yeah, well, that's what it looked like, right?
That's what it looked like. That's how he wanted us to play defense. We never did defense of scouts. We never worried about what the other team were going to run because we didn't allow them to run it. We was just out there like dogs with rabies running around and causing havoc.
I don't know about you. You probably saw him with more frequency in your post-playing career than have I. But the first time that I saw it, when he quit dyeing his hair or whatever, and all of a sudden he had the white hair and the goatee, I was like, who in the world is that? Were you stunned by that? He kind of looked honestly, he looked a little bit like Colonel Sanders, truth be told.
Yeah, he actually did. Yeah, I was stunned by that. I think that was just years of coaching.
Yeah. Hey, 15 rabid dogs will do that to you, right?
Sure.
It would do that. Yes, it will.
Coach, we'll end with this. I'll ask for some confirmation on this. Jeremiah Johnson, obviously Pacers TV sideline reporter, he retweeted us last night when we said that we were having you on the show, and he labeled you as the assistant coach with the best basketball skills in the NBA right now. Are you putting your basketball skills up with anybody in the league right now from a coaching standpoint?
From a coaching standpoint, yes. I would do that, but I'm not one of those coaches who still think he can play in the NBA. Those days are long gone for me.
And you got to clarify that, right?
You have to. Absolutely.
He's been a busy man throughout the draft workouts, obviously working out with some guys, and now he's going to lead a few of them out in Vegas. Jannero Pargo with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Coach, congrats on the opportunity. I've heard glowing remarks from pretty much everybody within the organization about you and your ability to coach, so congrats on this opportunity, and looking forward to watching the boys here over the next handful of days.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you guys having me on.
That is Jannero Pargo right there on the Payless Liquors Hotline. I thought that was some good stuff, Jake.
Very good. And it's fascinating, right? I mean, the part about Matherin right there. I mean, that. Look, we're going to try to run isolated sets for Ben Matherin and develop his game offensively in that area. That's exactly what Summer League's for.
And I thought that was kind of probably the biggest question people had when they saw the Summer League roster. Like, oh, wait, Matherin is on it? You typically don't see guys that have as great a rookie seasons as he did play in the Summer League. But when, Pargo brought up some of the rationale behind that, it got me thinking to that final game of the year where the Pacers were resting, obviously, a lot of guys at that point, just in that semi-tank mode. And Matherin, I think it was against the Knicks. I'm sure Obi Toppin had a huge game against the Pacers. But I think Matherin had a career high in assists that afternoon, that final kind of Sunday afternoon game. And I think that's the area where the Pacers want to see him grow is, to Pargo's point, as a one-on-one guy, he can get to the rim at will. And he's proven he can get to the foul line and finish at the rim and do that at a really high level. Now I think the next step for him is don't always feel the need to be a bull in a china shop. He can be a bull in a china shop, which is great, and it's impressive. But can you get into the lane and say, all right, let's pause, let's take a breath, realize people are probably collapsing on you because you have this reputation as a great scorer, and now can you find other guys? Can you be more of a distributor, more of a playmaker with that? So I thought some interesting comments there, not only on Matherin, but several of the other rookies. And Luol Deng, most underrated player.
That was fascinating, too.
I love Luol Deng.
No disrespect to Jeremiah Johnson or to Coach Pargo there, but let me throw out a couple of names here.
Oh, boy. There goes any chance we have of Pargo coming on the show again.
Well, I know that Pargo still practices with the team or is out there doing things. So
Jarris Walker had to guard Pargo during the draft workouts.
I think he's in great shape for sure. So I don't know that these other guys are in the same shape. Jacques Vaughn? Probably not, right? Steve Kerr? Steve Kerr looks like he'd still be able to play some pickup ball.
Pargo's spunky. Pargo's young.
Jason Kidd?
Too old.
Monty Williams?
Too old. How old's Pargo? He's got to be right around
43.
43? Yeah. I mean, what's Kidd? Kidd's got to be close to 50.
Kidd is just a year or two behind me, so he's 48. Vaughn would be 45 or 46, but Jacques Vaughn looks like he's enjoyed a few dinners with Khalid El-Amin.
Jason Kidd is 50.
Loved Khalid El-Amin. Yeah, Khalid El-Amin, I was looking for him on that Coney Island eating contest yesterday.
Okay, Doc Rivers. Okay, how about this? Damon Stoudemire?
Stoudemire's now in
he's a head
Georgia
coach.
Tech, right?
That's right.
I think you get to the point with Pargo's age, it's all about who's in the best shape. It's no longer about basketball skills,
I would agree
really.
with that. I would agree with that.
Even if you play pickup right now, pickup's not necessarily about who's the best basketball player. It's about who can run up and down the floor.
I didn't realize Vin Baker's an assistant with the Bucks. Is that still true?
Vin Baker, what a name.
Honestly, Ronald Norred probably can still play a little bit, right?
So what happened there? Was that a falling out between Norred and
That's a good
the Pacers?
question. I don't know. For those that are unfamiliar, Ronald Norred, the former Butler head coach, Butler player, who was a Pacers assistant coach, Brownsburg High School coach.
Somebody know him as a Butler head coach.
Now he is on his way to Atlanta to become an assistant for the Hawks. So I don't know what unless, and this is entirely possible, an elevation, although he was a pretty active assistant. I think Lloyd Pierce is kind of thought of as the lead assistant for the Pacers.
Yeah, when Carlisle gets ejected, Lloyd Pierce becomes
correct. So maybe Norred moves up a spot.
Jenny Bouchek now she was behind the bench last year. She will be on the bench this season. And then Jim Boylan. You see the Pacers hired him? Former Bulls head coach.
Excuse me, Mark?
Not a Boylan fan.
Okay.
It's the Bulls.
Like
Bulls
Luol
fan.
Deng, don't like Jim Boylan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Luol Deng was the straw that mixed the drink with that Bulls.
How about the Detroit Pistons, by the way, you ready for this? The Detroit Pistons assistant coaching staff. Jerome Allen, Brandon Bailey, DJ Baker, Bill Bano, John Beeline, Keith Bogans, Jordan Brink, Brittany Donaldson, Austin Dufault, Drew Jones, Rex Calamia, Rashard Lewis, and Jim Moran.
Boy, Keith Bogans. He could
Good
fill it up in
Lord.
Kentucky.
Rashard Lewis.
Yeah.
He could shoot.
Saturday the 8th, the Pacers against the Wizards. So is that the Bilal Coulibaly, Jarris Walker game?
That's right.
8 p.m. ESPN2. Monday the 10th.
The battle
Wednesday
of the draft
12th.
day trade.
Friday the 14th. The Pacers will have one more game on that. Again, we'll see about Trayce Jackson-Davis's health. I know he's been a little banged up here early on. Has not played yet for the Warriors. It's supposed to be Friday night at 11. That would be Trayce Jackson-Davis against Jalen Hood-Schifino. So we'll continue to monitor that situation. We'll continue some Pacers talk as well, getting a little Colts. Thank you to Jannero Pargo from the Pacers. That will be up on the podcast if you missed it. Kevin and Corey on the other side, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
and 107.5 The Fan.
Is this their signature song, Mark, or would you go with Dust in the Wind?
I would say this one.
Over Dust in the Wind?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
And I love both songs.
Bill and Ted would disagree.
I think that's a pretty close bet right there.
I mean, notably because it's the only two that most people can name, probably, right?
Yeah.
Kevin, while you were gone, and I hope you enjoyed the time in Michigan. We haven't gotten into that much, but up at the compound, while you were there was pretty big Colts news that we did not get your reaction towards or about or have not since. So we now know what the penalty is going to be for Isaiah Rodgers and would like to get your thoughts on it, but we're up against it, so we're going to do that on the other side to kick off the next hour. Sound good?
Let's do it. I love it.
All right. Kevin and Query, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
All right, 9 o'clock hour here. Kevin and Query, hope you guys had a safe 4th of July. A little bit back to reality today. It's a steamy one in Indy. Believe it's going to be that way again tomorrow. Some rain in the forecast. Looks like temperature is going to drop a little bit here coming up this weekend. Jake, I did see, I missed a little bit of Colts news late last week. Is that right?
I'd say a little bit is a fair way of saying it. And I can't remember. My days all jumble together, so my apologies. But, of course, we now know that Isaiah Rodgers – and the one thing I think that was interesting, Kevin, was we knew going into it that Isaiah Rodgers was the player that was, part of this investigation in the NFL for gambling. And Adam Schefter had initially come out to say, he's going to be suspended a year. I think it was Adam Schefter. And I thought, if he wagered on the Colts, we already have precedent for, Calvin Ridley being suspended one season for wagering on NFL games. You would think that wagering on your own team would increase even above and beyond that. And, in fact, it did. Because Isaiah Rodgers' suspension is listed as indefinitely.
Yeah, he's got to apply for reinstatement, which is what Ridley had to do as well.
Rashad Berry, backup defensive end who's had kind of a journeyman route already in the NFL, was released as well. He was the other that was involved in this.
Yeah, and care if I chime in or right there on Barry, because I did have a few people reach out to me late in the week and be like, oh boy, another Colts player. You know, like they're like, oh man, there's two. Because the headlines could easily say 2 Colts players suspended for a year and cut by the team. Rashard Berry joined the Colts in early January 2023. So, and again, I don't know this for sure, but it is my assumption that when Rashard Berry was betting on, I would guess, NFL games, he did this when he was not with the Colts. He actually was with, I think, Jacksonville a little bit last season. I believe he was with Detroit as well, which Detroit we know has had a slew of gambling-related violations within their roster. So I don't think this one screams as a Colts player, you know, under Chris Ballard's watch, that sort of thing. I am assuming that this happened before he joined the Colts. In Rodgers' case, though, obviously a Colts player, obviously a Chris Ballard draft pick. And honestly, when I saw the news, Jake, I wasn't shocked at all by the length. I wasn't shocked at all that the Colts cut him, 30 minutes after the NFL released the statement, if it was even that long. It's just a reminder to me of the stupidity that Isaiah Rodgers did in risking such a golden opportunity. And I understand the NFL is in bed with gambling apps and all of that, but if 99% of the league can follow the rules, then why can't you?
Do they?
I mean, if you look at the numbers right now, I mean, what have we had? Probably 10 of the 90-man roster times 32. I don't know what the math is, but I'd say 99% of the league is following it. And I think his own teammates have said that. EJ Speed said it very bluntly, I thought, in the days after the Isaiah Rodgers thing just happened, in saying it's pretty simple. Just don't bet. It's not worth the risk.
But here is my question, and I don't know the answer. Was Isaiah Rodgers found to be guilty of this, and Barry, because of an investigation that was specifically targeting them because something had been tipped off, or were they caught up in a league-wide investigation? In other words, the analogy I used the other day, Kevin, there are 2 ways that an impaired driver gets pulled over and pulled off the road. One is that impaired driver is driving erratically and someone calls in and says, there's someone on the road that looks like they're impaired. And the police find them and pull them over and determine they're impaired and remove them from the road. The other is the police set up an area where they start pulling people over and randomly checking them and determine, well, that person is impaired, and remove them from the road. Which manner is what got Isaiah Rodgers off the football field? Did the NFL get a phone call that someone was acting erratically and therefore that person was investigated and he and Barry were found in that? Or were they doing a league-wide investigation and these are the only that turned up?
Yeah, I don't know for sure, I guess, to answer. But if I'm not mistaken, I think it was like the geolocation. So for anybody that, and I know this because I was just in Michigan this past weekend, when you cross state lines and you're trying to use a gambling app, oftentimes it will say, all right, we need to confirm your location. And in the states that gambling is not allowed, it will not let you bet. So there is a location tag with all of these gambling apps. And I think that is part of it of the NFL has relationships with the respective gambling companies that if you do make a bet, they are contractually obligated to release that information to the league, whether that is a location, aka at the team facility, or whether that is the type of bet in that you can bet on other sports, you can't bet on the NFL though. So don't bet on the NFL and don't bet at the team facility. Those are the 2 big things.
The thing that I could see collecting players, and I think now it's abundantly clear. Hell, if it's clear to you and I, it's got to be clear to somebody who's playing in the league. But one thing, Kevin, that if I was an NFL player, I would not have been aware. I mean, I'm sure they were made aware of it, but that surprised me, is you and I have been, I mean, you're in the Colts locker room every Wednesday. When I worked in television, notably, I was at Colts availability every Wednesday. I think they had, I'm trying to think, they had Wednesday availability, maybe Friday back then, and then, of course, after games, whatever else. When you go into an NFL locker room in the middle of the winter, you go in there and you get a glimpse of what the day looks like for those players before practice begins, because that's when the media is in there. And guys are walking around. Some of them are getting out of the whirlpool to get, where they're loosening up their legs. Some are getting treatment on a knee. Some are just in there to look at film before practice. And they're walking in and out of the locker room. And there are always, Kevin, it's like literally a sampling size of life. And I'm saying all of this for people that don't have the privilege of the access that we've had. You walk into the locker room and there are 70 lockers. And in those 70 lockers, which encompass, obviously the practice squad and the regular roster and whatever else, there's always one or two guys that are just like sitting at their locker, and it looks like they're almost like looking over the mail. There are always one or two guys that are sitting there, and maybe they're playing a video game. Somebody's got a video game system set up, console in their locker, and there's a couple of guys playing them. A couple of guys maybe playing Nerf basketball or something. And there's always one or two guys that come walking in, and they walk over to their locker, and they're wearing shorts and a T-shirt and flip-flops. They walk over to their locker, and they unlock it, and they pull out, look at a couple of things that have been left by a trainer, and they grab their phone. And they sit down at their chair in front of their locker like all of us do, and they're looking through their phone. And they're probably checking Facebook and Twitter and text messages and email and whatever. And I would imagine it would be that they also flip open one of the apps. Oh, you know what? I played at Boise State, and one of the guys that on my dorm floor is a baseball player now. He plays for the Padres, and I just realized he's starting tonight. That'd be fun. I'm going to put down $20 on the Padres to win against the Braves tonight. That'd be fun. And he puts it on there. And he's inside the facility, and he has now violated an NFL league rule. I think it would have been very easy for players to fall victim to that before. I don't know about now, but how clear was that made to them?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question on the clarity of it. I mean, clearly, if you look at the numbers, it's not like it's been 5 players on every single team, or even bigger numbers than that. So clearly, a large portion of the NFL population has been able to follow these rules. I think some of that is on the league. I think some of that is on agents of these players to make it abundantly clear that they do not do this. I'll go back to the stupidity, word that I use with Rodgers, because again, we're talking about, you rank the top 5 Colts on the roster, most important, greatest opportunities sit on a platter for them in 2023. Rodgers would be near the top of the list. I mean, we're talking the final year of his rookie contract, a day 3 pick, comes from a small school. It's make or break. The depth chart is wide open, and he risks it for these bets. And there's a report out there that, he had $1,000 prop bet on the over-under of a Colts running back. That's where you get in the slippery slope of integrity.
Sure.
Let's just take, for example, Zach Moss. Zach Moss ran for over 100 yards to end the season. So does that mean in the days leading up to the game on Sunday, Isaiah Rodgers was out at practice for 3 days and was like, damn, Zach Moss is getting all the reps at running back. No Deion Jackson. No, Jonathan Taylor was hurt at the time. I'm trying to think who even the other running backs were on the roster. He clearly knew. He clearly had inside information. And so now he goes and places a bet, and if that word gets out, now all of a sudden you've lost a little integrity of the game. And if that snowballs, that's what the NFL cannot afford. So
I'm curious if that's the bet that set off the kind of the warning signs to the sports books when they see a wager of 4 figures and like, interesting, because usually sports books like to highlight big money wagers that hit. I wonder if they saw $1,000 over under.
That's how the Alabama baseball game bet happened. So remember that story? It was Alabama, I think, versus LSU, and the bet was placed in a Cincinnati. I want to say it was the sports book attached to Great American Ballpark. That bet was placed there. It was a significant amount for an Alabama-LSU baseball game in Ohio. And that triggered something in their system of like, what in the world is this?
Right.
And they're able to find out that the Alabama manager had tipped off that his ace wasn't starting, and that's how all of that unfolded.
There have been, over the course of time, sports gambling scandals in college athletics that the red flag was when Boston College basketball, or Boston College might have been football, but a school that normally gets, and I'm just literally throwing out random numbers, a school that normally gets $80,000 of activity in a Las Vegas sports book per game, all of a sudden has $450,000 being wagered on it. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, something's going on here. That's how those things get tipped off. So that's entirely possible. The thing that I've said about this, Kevin, and I'm going to repeat what I've said numerous times, the NFL's biggest concern is they want to make sure that, and don't kid yourself, I don't mean you, I'm saying people in general, the NFL, when they say they're worried about the integrity of the game, what they're worried about is that you can trust the integrity of your wager. Because the NFL knows. The NFL is the 800-pound gorilla in this country, and a huge, huge, huge aspect of that is gambling. And so they want to absolutely make certain that you know that when you place a wager on a team or a parlay or an aspect of the game in a otherwise game that is meaningless to you between the Cleveland Browns and the Buffalo Bills on Thursday Night Football, they want you watching that game. They want you interested in that game. And they know that the second that you no longer feel like placing a $10 wager on that game is something that is in your best interest because it might be tainted, and so therefore you're not going to place that wager, and therefore your interest level in that particular otherwise innocuous and meaningless game to you is taken away. That is the NFL's biggest fear. Don't kid yourself. When they talk about the integrity of the game, what they mean is the integrity of your bet.
They mean product too. Because in 1960 whatever, when they suspended Alex Karras and Paul Hornung for a year because they bet, that was because of the product. And they want you to watch the product.
But even back then though, Kevin, before apps and everything else, I mean,
but they weren't in bed with the apps then.
Understood, but what I'm saying is they knew. I mean, the Daily Line in 1960, you pick up the Cleveland Plain Dealer and go to the sports page. Even though it was illegal everywhere but Las Vegas, they still put the lines in the back of the pages. I mean, they still put the wagers in there. They knew that it was taking place. I mean, I'm just saying they absolutely know. And to your point now, they are in bed with the apps, and so they want to make sure that that their customer, which is in this case the app, their business partner, has an integrity of its product, right? I mean, all the way around.
I know Matt wanted to join in on this conversation. Matt, good morning to you.
Well, morning, guys. How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. With the comments Jake was making about the confusion, I guess the Jameson Williams, he bet at his team hotel on a college football game. So it's not just the facility, it's any team-related activity. And with is it a field sobriety checkpoint or is it anything like that? The timing of it, didn't like 12 players all get suspended, a couple for the Commanders, a couple for the Lions, a couple for the Colts, so all at the same time?
I think they all were in related to 2022 activities. I don't know if, all of them happened in September, October, November from last year. I do think, to your point, Matt, again, more clarity on exactly team facility, team hotel, team buses, team airplane. I mean, that stuff I think is a bit confusing there. And it's probably why Jameson Williams only got 6 games. Or the guy for the Titans, Petit Ferrier, their big offensive tackle for the Buckeyes from Ohio State, he just got 6 games. And that fell in line with I think he did it actually at the Titans facility. He bet on, I believe it was some sort of other sport. Maybe it was.
The hotel, I can totally
an Ohio State game.
Give benefit of the doubt there. I mean, again, I think now it's clear to everybody, and I would assume it was very clear to the players from the get-go. But, I mean, can't you see it, though? Like you
Sure. And that's why
you got an away game. You fly into the team hotel. You're laying around on a Saturday, and what are we going to do here? We just had walk through and we had training table, whatever, and I'm back in the room and Georgia and Fresno State are getting ready to kick off. Yeah, I'll put $20 on this. What? Boom, you're in the team hotel. I mean, that's pretty nitpicky, but hey, rules are rules, right?
I think we all have rules at the companies that we work at that sometimes you're like, wait, what? Why?
We don't hear.
No,
right?
none. Here. Petit Ferrer again, 6 games for the Titans. The other big, I thought, AFC South news, this is not gambling related. This is performance-enhancing drugs related. Jacksonville left tackle Cam Robinson, 4 games for PEDs. So that means week 1 here at Lucas Oil Stadium, Trevor Lawrence will be dealing with a backup left tackle for Jacksonville. I said when the schedule came out, I think that is the ideal time to play the Jags if you're the Colts. Ideal time. Opener, hype, offseason hype, intrigue, all of it. Throw in a backup left tackle.
Does Jacksonville come back to earth a little bit? There's a lot of expectation on them, Kevin.
Didn't they, weren't they on earth last year and then they just got hot for a month?
Yeah, but there's...
And, they almost got blown off the field in their playoff game. They had to make some historic comeback. I feel like at times we got too caught up in the moment of Jacksonville.
Their playoff game was Cincinnati. They had a chance.
No, they had the huge comeback with the Chargers.
Oh, you're talking about before they got eliminated.
Yeah, then they lost to Kansas City in the next round.
That's right. They had a huge comeback. You're right.
They had to beat Tennessee in the last week of the season to make the playoffs. They easily could have lost that. I mean, Tennessee literally
all I'm saying is there is
leg.
now a lot of expectation on them because it seemed like you could visually see things coming together for them.
Yeah, that is fair. And they are, I think, kind of them and the Lions are in that, oh, yeah, they're the team. They're all of a sudden going to make another jump forward. I'll say last thing on the Isaiah Rodgers front, and this gets back to, again, just how much of an opportunity he's thrown away here. Right now, 3 weeks from today, the Colts will have their first training camp practice. And Dallas Flowers will be a starting corner in that training camp practice. And I would say right now, Jake, I'd feel pretty confident to say that Dallas Flowers will be a week 1 starter for the Colts. And if you rewind to December 15th, the midway point of the final month of the year last year, Dallas Flowers had yet to play a defensive snap in the NFL. Had yet to play a defensive snap in the NFL. And here we are, 7-8 months later, 3 weeks before training camp, and that dude would, I think, qualify as a very good chance to be a starter at one of the most important positions on the football team. I mean, we're not talking right guard. We're not talking linebacker. We're talking corner in today's NFL. It's just wild to me how that position group, and it's not just the Rodgers news, the trade of Stephon Gilmore as well, how much that position group is overturned, and again, how much of an opportunity Rodgers has thrown away, because it's not like he needed to do a whole lot to secure a starting job, potentially make a second contract, and boom, all of a sudden he's making the $2.5 million he was supposed to make this year, and now he's signing a 3-year, $12 million deal next year.
Now, do you remember...
With 2 kids under the age of 1, by the way.
Do you remember this time, like a year... Well, it would have been about 10 months ago. Who on this program was the one that was the most high on Dallas Flowers through training camp and through the preseason? Anybody recall?
A stroke of an ego is not something that I missed during
Now, I'm going to confess something to you.
It was because of his college mascot?
4 things. He had
only 4?
He had a tipped pass interception in the end zone in one of their preseason games. And I thought, well, that's good hand-eye coordination. Then I was like, well, who is this guy? And then they said his name was Dallas Flowers. Well, I liked his last name, and then I thought it was cool that he was named after a city that has an NFL team, so there's 2. 3, I looked at it and I went, well, cornerback is a position where, he can return some punts or whatever. Maybe he can make the roster. And then 4, and this was the big one, he went to Pittsburgh State, which is the Gorillas, and is like a Division 2 or 3 power. And when I was at University of Kansas, I had a buddy from Pittsburgh, Kansas, who was a big Gorillas fan, and they're a big deal there. So those 4 added together instantly made me realize this was the next Ty Law.
Oh.
That's the exact formula that I used. So there was 0 football acumen for the most part in what I did in my evaluation.
Is that why he didn't make your top 10 most indispensable Colts list? Because I'm looking right at it, and I don't see Dallas Flowers listed here.
No, I'm openly mocking my own criteria.
Couldn't pass Danny Pinter on that list.
Yeah. Or Rigoberto Sanchez.
Rigoberto Sanchez was a key loss for them.
4-12-1 because the punter tore his Achilles.
I mean, what positions were last year of Danny Pinter is one. Danny Pinter, would you agree, let them down?
Yeah, I'd put 5 other offensive linemen above Danny Pinter in terms of people that let down the Colts.
Understood, but what I'm saying is if Danny Pinter was a guy that they had a lot of hope and expectation for last year, that I think his inability to deliver on that had an impact on their season.
Are we doing the show from training camp? I saw a lot of morning practices announced with the schedule.
I believe we are, yes.
13 open practices for the Colts at training camp for those that missed it. 7 of those in the morning. That is I shouldn't say but that is definitely a shorter Grand Park schedule than we're used to with the Colts.
Agreed.
July 26th will be the first practice, again, 3 weeks from today. The last one will be that joint session with the Bears on August 17th. There are a lot of breaks within that schedule as well. So there are a couple Saturday night practices. Again, both the Bears practices are at 6 p.m. That's Wednesday the 16th of August, Thursday the 17th of August, a Sunday afternoon practice. So you do get more probably weekend times, but just in general, from a quantity standpoint, a little bit of a shorter camp schedule at Grand Park. Year 5 there.
How many public practices with the Bears?
2. Back-to-back 16th and the 17th, and that leads right into our back 9 event on the 18th, right?
Did you see Justin Fields doing the Gentlemen Start Your Engines for the NASCAR race?
Yeah.
People were getting on him because it was low energy. I thought it was more odd that he was wearing a long sleeve sweater.
I think they had him in a hotel. I don't think that was outside. It looked like it was like a hotel.
Was he getting ready for the rain?
Inside with the weather, yeah.
Again, our back 9 event will be August 18th. So right after the 2 joint practices with the Bears, you can head out. Actually, go to our fan page. This is a great page that we have up on our website. If you go to the events section, some great shots of the back 9.
Back 9 is cool.
Downtown. A great golf event, entertainment. You've got 2 big screen TVs, get a view of downtown. So we'll be out there for that is a fan golf outing presented by Franciscan Health, August 18th. 10 a.m. is when things begin. 11 a.m. officially underway. Lunch will be provided throughout the day. JMV is going to be broadcasting live from there. So looking forward to that. Again, August 18th. That is a Friday, the perfect way to start your weekend a little early.
By the way, speaking of weekend, it's not necessarily the weekend we're recapping because it's a Wednesday, but it felt like the weekend. So let's get you caught up to date on what took place in the world of sports yesterday.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
When you're talking about Independence Day and the 4th of July, of course, that means the Nathan's famous hot dog coney eating, I guess it's coney dogs, but these are not coney dogs, but hot dogs eating contest. Joey Chestnut of Westfield, Indiana. I believe the record is 77. Yesterday, he ate 62 hot dogs.
76 is the record. 77 would be the record he wants.
The new record?
Yeah.
Who holds the existing record?
Joey Chestnut.
So why does he keep talking about how he wants the record? He has the record.
I don't know.
Because he defines greatness. He wants more.
He's always looking for more.
Mark, can you play that clip? Mother Nature.
What a roller coaster emotion.
Oh, okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Mother Nature delayed the event. That could have really just turned it upside down. And Joey Chestnut just staying the course, shows his ability to adjust, to adapt, to lead, and comes out there and doesn't miss a beat.
What a roller coaster emotionally. They told us it was canceled. We weren't sure if we were going to eat today. And I'm just happy. It's 4th of July, and I got to eat some hot dogs and get a win.
We didn't know if we were going to eat today. What, he just drink a bunch of water to get set for the next day?
How great is that? The look on his face when he was walking back out there after the rain delay. Oh, my gosh. Looked like MJ coming on the court for Game 7.
Ice in his veins.
What happened to that Kobayashi fella? Is he still there?
Yeah, we need a 30 for 30 on that because that could have been one of the greatest rivalries in sport.
And then that Kobayashi, he went wacky one time, right? And they had to tase him and move him off the stage.
And there was some rumors last year that Kobayashi sent the protester up there to try and derail Chestnut. Remember the choke slam by Chestnut?
Oh, it was incredible.
Unbelievable last year.
True American hero. By the way, Major League Baseball, thank you. Major League Baseball, Reds back in first in the NL Central.
But here come the Red Legs.
8-4 winners over the Washington Nationals. That's 3 straight for Cincinnati. They were helped out by the Cubs, who defeated the Brewers 7-6. It was Marlins 15-2 over the Cardinals. Mets over the D-backs 8-5. Pirates winners over the Dodgers. Oakland over Detroit 1-0. The White Sox 4-3 losers to the Blue Jays. And the Indianapolis Indians, 8-5 winners over the Memphis Redbirds.
Fireworks galore there over at Victory
Didn't
Field.
Memphis used to be the Chicks?
Really?
I think it was the Memphis Chicks and the Louisville Redbirds. Now it's the Memphis Redbirds.
I do remember the Louisville Redbirds back in the day. Again, home at Victory Field all week long for the Indians. A couple of other notes. The Fever back in action tonight in Minnesota. They have lost 4 in a row. And Jake, I know it was a few days ago, but you talk about dominance. That would define Alex Palou right now in IndyCar.
Yeah, Colton Herta started on pole at Mid-Ohio, but Alex Palou, who started 4th, eventually worked his way up to the front, and then there was really no looking back. Palou was in dominant fashion, wins his 3rd straight race, 4th of the season, has a huge points lead. The other storyline in the race of the IndyCar race in Mid-Ohio probably is that of rookie Benjamin Peterson, who was running in the back of the field, was a lap down, and a lot of the cars that were trying to work around him, including Palou, the leader, couldn't get around him. And many thought that he was blocking, thought he was too aggressive. I kind of understand it. You're a young driver. You want to stay as much on the lead lap or a lap down as you can. It's a tough thing to tell a guy to just lose the instinct to let people go past. Something you learn over the course of time in your career. NASCAR running on the streets of Chicago, absolutely fabulous in terms of the visuals of it. Mark, did you say, have you talked to anybody in Chicago or just what the overall thought process was of it in hindsight?
Yeah, people that weren't NASCAR fans did watch it on TV. I know obviously the weather played a huge factor as far as turnout in person, but very cool visually. I think people enjoyed it. The ratings seem to back that up as well. So it'll be pretty interesting to see how they did. But a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, I drive that road all the time. People are reflecting on their route to work all the time with he's turning by the Field Museum.
And that's why you got to keep on doing it.
Yeah.
Get away from the in-person experience and more of the how cool does it look on TV.
The winner, of course, the Kiwi, Shane Van Gisbergen from New Zealand, winning his first NASCAR event. That is the first time that has happened since Johnny Rutherford did it in a Daytona qualifying race in 1963.
2 things I want to add. Shout out to Luke. Thank you for this, Luke. Kevin, there is a 30 for 30 on Chestnut versus Kobayashi. It's called The Good, the Bad, and the Hungry.
Really?
I don't know how I didn't know this. I can't wait to see Maddie's look on her face.
Firing that up this afternoon, probably.
That's what we're going to be watching tonight. Secondly, Jake, let's go back to IndyCar quickly over the weekend. Simon Pagenaud in that crash.
Yeah, that was Simon Pagenaud had a brake failure. His car basically went side. He flipped 6 times, and it is amazing that he walked away from the crash. He was not medically cleared by IndyCar, even though he was in. He walked away from it and was good the next day. But
so, like concussion protocol.
My guess would be a concussion protocol. Connor Daly filled in for him and did fine. Meyershank Racing is rumored to be making some changes for next year in terms of their roster. I don't know that would include Pagenaud, but we shall see. But they've made extensive changes to the cars, always in the sake of safety. And I think over the weekend, whatever it was. Yeah, it was Saturday, right? That paid off for Simon Pagenaud. My days are all mixed up because it's a Wednesday today. But scary accident, but the good news is, he was able to walk away.
Yeah, I don't think we're used to seeing that type of single car incident very often.
No.
Flipping 6-7 times.
Yeah, so what happened essentially was, his brakes failed, and so Pagenaud maneuvered the car in a certain way to try to slow down, I think, the inertia of, the energy of the speed that he had. And in doing so, just the combination of the way he turned it and then the car going from pavement to grass to the what they call the kitty litter, the sand trap, is what got the car airborne. And then it just basically rolled sideways through the air off of the ground 6 times before coming to a stop.
Confused. We continue to see these tarps going out at Wimbledon. Didn't they put roofs on a lot of these courts?
I did see last night.
Huh? There's just 2 of them? That looked like center court to me, and we're throwing a tarp on it.
If you're there, isn't it pronounced Wimbledon? In England. Scotty says no. I'll bet you on that. I'll bet if you go to England, they say Wimbledon.
Really? That sounds more Southern Indiana than it does.
I know. I know we say Wimbledon, but I believe the correct pronunciation is Wimbledon.
Wimbledon's.
It is time for the pop quiz. Scotty is in the building. Scotty was
emphatic in his denial of my Wimbledon.
Yeah, that was quick. Are we getting a Joey Chestnut question on the pop quiz? Yes. Oh, I love it. We get a Joey Chestnut question on the pop quiz. Give us a call. Jiffy Lube Oil Change up for grabs. 317-239-1070.
Have you studied? Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with Kevin and Query. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
You know, the first question on the Pop Quiz should be, what day of the week is it?
Yeah, it's going to be one of those weeks, right?
I mean, it's just weird, right?
I don't love a Tuesday, 4th of July for several reasons, but I mean, driving in this morning, there was a moment I just looked in the mirror and said, all right, Kevin, you can do this. 3 days. Let's go.
Now, what day of the week what are the best and worst days of the week for the 4th?
Oh, if it falls on a weekend, that stinks because you're not really getting any time off of work.
I think the best
And the firework people go crazy, right?
I think the best day for 4th of July is Thursday. No one is requiring you to work that Friday.
Would you rather have the freebie days be at the beginning or the end?
End.
Mm-hmm.
So you can treat Sunday how it should be treated, as a decompress, recharge the batteries.
Yeah, I agree, because then everybody gets the fireworks out of their system Thursday, Friday, and then kind of, re-energize and get ready for Sunday.
Last night, people acted like it was the final day on Earth. And now they're hit with the reality of they got to work today.
I know. I mean, I couldn't believe when I got up this morning. I'm like, there was still like the smoke haze in the air.
God, it was steamier than steam.
But I'm not saying anything negative about people that do their own customized Sad Sam's let's blow up everything fireworks show, because then you get misconstrued as non-American. So,
they're going to find where you live, Jake, and do that again tonight.
That's right.
Because that's going to last all week long. All right, we got the pop quiz. There is a Joey Chestnut question. Did I miss this? The good, the bad, the hungry, the 30 for 30? Chestnut and Kobayashi?
It feels like the 30 for 30s now. In the outset of the 30 for 30, they were like 2 hour long, like really well done documentaries. I feel like now there's like shorts.
Yeah.
There's
Now they all,
of them.
instead of being on TV, they're all on, like, go watch it on ESPN Plus. I'm like, oh, okay.
Unpopular opinion, I thought the Reggie Miller versus the Knicks 30 for 30 was really like, I loved it from the nostalgic Indianapolis standpoint, but they tried to pack too many different things into like one show. It had like the Reggie and Cheryl thing and the Reggie and Spike thing and the Pacers versus Hicks versus Knicks thing. And there were like a billion things going on. Stick with one. Same with the Bo Jackson one. The Bo Jackson one I liked, and then after a while it just kind of ran its course. It was too long. They were doing too much.
Mark, we got callers?
We've got callers.
Jake, number 1 through 8.
We'll go with number 6.
6 is who, Mark?
Jackson.
Jackson.
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
Mark Jackson, you think? Maybe?
Jackson, you're a regular of the pop quiz, right?
I've been on a few times, yes, sir.
Have you won before?
I'd say somewhere between 3 and 4 times over the years.
Wow, okay.
Jackson, you sound like you got a great singing voice. Has there ever been any singing in your background?
Man, I sang in a wedding one time, a long time ago, but I don't know. I really don't know why they asked me.
Now, like, you actually sang because they wanted you to sing because you have good vocals, or it was 11 p.m. at the wedding, the band was packing up, and you grabbed the mic?
Well, I've done that too, but yeah, no, they actually had me sing at the wedding, but yeah, I still to this day, I'm not sure why.
Now, Jackson, personally, I think Jackson is a super cool first name. But
it's a name I wanted for Max.
Typically, it's a middle or last name. So I'm curious, if one's first name is Jackson, what is you don't have to say your middle name, but what's your middle initial?
Preston, P.
Okay. See, it's also not I shouldn't say uncommon, but typically if somebody has a multisyllabic first name, it's a monosyllabic middle name. So to have multiple syllables in both, unique. I kind of like that, right?
Yeah, I had Jackson on my boy name list for Max. I thought Max sounded too much like a dog.
No, that's a ringing endorsement for your son.
Well, now he's my dog. He's my dog.
That's nice.
Harrison and Jackson, but then Maddie said no more SON names. So we had to move on there.
Jackson, would you like for me, that would be Jake, or for Kevin to lead you off with question number 1?
Let's go with Kevin today.
All right, Jackson, let's do it. The Pacers acquired Obi Toppin from the Knicks over the holiday weekend. In college, his team was ranked number 1, or was going to be a number 1 seed until COVID happened. Where did Toppin play college basketball? Belmont, Murray State, Dayton, or he went straight from high school to the G League?
Dayton.
Okay, question number 2. Joey Chestnut
Flyers.
won his 16th mustard belt with his win in yesterday's Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest in New York City. 62 of them he ate yesterday in 10 minutes. He also holds the record, which is the perfect number for an event that takes place on July 4th. What is the record that Joey Chestnut holds for most hot dogs in one Nathan's contest? 62, 70, 72. No, look at Jackson. All right.
Number
76,
3
he said.
Ellie De La Cruz. Did I mention to you guys I got a De La Cruz shirt?
Really?
Yeah, it's coming in the mail. I cannot wait. Ellie De La Cruz had 4 hits in the Reds' win over the Nationals yesterday in D.C. Named the last player age 21 or younger to have a 4-hit game on the 4th of July. Jackson, was it A-Rod, Ken Griffey Jr., Robin Yount, or the household name of Bobby Dorr?
Let's go with the household name, Bobby Dorr.
This isn't your first rodeo.
I ordered a Chinese knockoff De La Cruz jersey. It's a De La Cobalt, by the way. A little less expensive.
Lord.
Jackson,
When's
question
my next
number 4.
vacation?
That was a Monday joke.
Unbelievable. I got one more vacation.
It is a
before
Monday.
training
Come
camp.
on.
Oh.
Jackson, 8 Atlanta Braves were named to the National League All-Star team, the first time an NL team has sent 8 players to the All-Star game since 2008. Which National League team in 2008 sent 8 players to the All-Star game? Reds, Cubs, Dodgers, or Phillies?
Let's go with the Phillies.
Okay.
Okay, we'll round out with this, Jackson. Jackie Robinson broke Major League Baseball's color line on April 15th, 1947 for the Brooklyn Dodgers of the National League. On July 5th, 1947, the first African-American in American League history made his debut. Was it A, Larry Doby, B, Satchel Paige, C, Minnie Minoso? I read that as Minnie Mouse at first. Or D, Willard Brown?
Oh, who was it? Can you say the names again?
Yeah, was it Larry Doby, Satchel Paige, Minnie Minoso, or Willard Brown?
I think it was Larry Doby.
Jackson, I can't recall. What school did you attend?
I went to Anderson Madison Heights. It's no longer around.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, I think we did this before with you, but so Anderson, you had Anderson, Anderson Highland, and Anderson Madison Heights, right?
That's correct.
And there is now only one of those still in existence, right? Anderson?
Yes, sir.
But Anderson is actually utilizing either, is it Madison because of the fire, is it Madison Heights or Highland that Anderson High School now uses?
Yeah, it's housed in what was Madison Heights.
Okay, so your old high school is still in existence. It just now is Anderson High School and not Madison Heights.
That's correct.
Did Winston Morgan and Stu Robinson, were they Madison Heights?
Yes, they were.
Okay.
Ray Talbert and Bobby Wilkerson too.
Yeah, I didn't know if all 4 of them. I thought one of them might have gone to Anderson, but.
And what's the latest in the wigwam?
Boy, the wigwam. Do you know that, Jackson?
Last I heard, it's kind of a mess, but I don't know that for sure. I've not seen it.
Jackson, you ever played Killbuck Golf Course in Anderson?
Yeah, a couple of times, yeah. It's a nice course.
Nice track. When Colts had training camp up there, I used to play that quite often.
You ever been to the IHOP on Scatterfield?
Many times, yes, sir.
Which of the 9?
13 stoplights on Scatterfield between 69 and Colts training camp. Jackson, great work as always. Well, that was a 4 for 5 effort.
That was solid.
Only one he missed, Jake, was your question.
The only one he missed, the 2008 All-Star game, it was 8 Chicago Cubs that started. He said Phillies, the answer was the Cubs. He got every other question correct.
Impressive.
You blew it!
Should have asked Jackson what song he sang at that wedding.
Got to be Piano Man, right?
Line, Mark?
Yeah, he's still there.
Jackson, what was the song that they had you sing at the wedding?
I Will Be Here by Stephen Curtis Chapman.
Can you give us a few notes?
Oh man.
Come on.
Yeah, clear your throat. I thought you were going to say Ave Maria, but chime in whenever.
Gosh, are you guys serious?
No, yeah,
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Take a shot of Jaeger.
It's July
if you need to.
5th. Come on,
Get
Jackson.
back in the zone.
All right. I'll just sing the first line, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. Tomorrow morning, if you wake up and the sun does not appear, I will be here
Let's go. Jackson, great work.
That's sounds like the opening act at the IHOP on Scatterfield.
Unbelievable. How is Anderson Casino not had Jackson out there to
That
lead
is
off?
beautiful.
What
is
a great
beautiful.
sport. Jackson, thanks for calling, man.
All right, guys, take it easy.
Oh, that is absolutely wonderful by Jackson. All right, we'll do it one final time here. Kevin and Gloria.
amazing award. I wouldn't miss it.
Well, I was going to say, goes without saying, Tyler's going to be there too, right?
Oh yeah, he will.
It is.
His led, he lives on. He gave money to Scott. Scott has a camp in Bloomington, Camp Emmalou. And there's a huge tree house there, Tyler's Tree House. And it all started with money from Tyler he handed to Scott, and then it just snowballed from there. And there's a 3,000 square foot tree house in the woods on the camp property. So,
well, Pam, it's a special story for certain. And I appreciate you taking the time this morning to share it, and certainly hope you have a great time in Cooperstown and are able to soak in Scott Rowland's accomplishment and that of the bond with your son as well. Appreciate you sharing it this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Pam. Wow, what a cool story. Absolutely unbelievable at Scott Rowland and the gesture of him off the field. And as Jake said, July 23rd, that weekend coming up, Scott Rowland into Cooperstown, and a Hall of Fame act off the field as well as a hell of a player on it. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Have a great